I can't accept your proposal. The cut-off paper was ruthlessly thrown on the table. It was the divorce document that the man had just thrown down. John's low-dust voice hovered in the air. I was confused and looked at his face. Why? John, this agreement was made before going to revenge. The agreement is simple. John helps Dahlia get revenge, and Dahlia will help John get revenge. Travel, marriage, and life as a protector. After the revenge is over, you must be clean and Luo Di returns to their respective lives. God said that when revenge ends, there will only be one person left in this world, so I can't stay here any longer. Dahlia knows better than John the truth about the world that he doesn't know, and I hope he never knows the truth. I hope John can have a happy future without knowing anything. I will send the documents to you. You must change your appointment then. You can pretend to be calm and turn around, making Leah's back look elegant. He has always been elegant and calm, and he has no reason to hesitate in front of his own choices. I said I wouldn't stamp it. I hate that I always lose my cool in front of them, but now I can only admit it. The intense voice made Dahlia shudder. You Han, let me go now. The feud is over. I no longer miss this life. I am very grateful that you are so good to me. Welcome. Master Dahlia has already looked at the face of the beautiful man in the carving class. Dahlia couldn't open her eyes. She never thought that there would be a day when that man would say the word love. The past time came to my mind in a state of stress, and I tore the book cover of this novel with my hands. The day we rebuilt the world. Hey, did you hear that? You thought it was a woman and her companion Da Shan, who were flirting with the wandering wolf. The two of them were cleaning the floor while having a conversation. The topic of the conversation was the most hidden rumors in the mansion recently. The lady suddenly became very kind since she fell ill. What? It was the female Peng Chi glasses who laughed randomly. Peng Fu heard the funniest joke this year. The evil daughter of the Ming dynasty, Dahlia, is a woman ranked second in the system. Her temper is as brave as her beautiful appearance. Yesterday Susan accidentally broke a vase. The electronics master looked around and made sure there was no one around, then said wait. The lady just used the sedan chair to give her a little kiss. The girl with eyes caught a cold and asked, is it true? Didn't the vase break into pieces, or the water was spilled? There was no familiar slap, right? While the two were chatting, a voice broke into Juan Nao's chat. Hey, you two, what are you doing if you don't clean up properly? The two queens turned around and found that the person they were discussing was standing behind them. What fun is there to forget about cleaning? No amount of modification can express Dahlia's beauty. Her appearance is noble and divine, and even his bad temper makes people forget about it. Come on, clean every corner of my heart. Very sexy. It's a very cold blow. Also left with a quiet pace. The two people, who were touched slowly blushed for a moment when Daria disappeared behind the pillar. They started digging and screaming. You just saw it. The two of them were making a fuss, as if they were facing an angel falling from the sky. With a bright expression on her eyes, the lady just passed by. I thought she would take over the head of the water, or let me climb on the ground to pay homage to the grey god. Oh my god, did the goddess Suiduan give her a blessing? Dahlia, who was hiding far away behind the pillar, was speechless for a while. Do they understand that this kind of kindness can also change? After reading this novel and possessing Dahlia, I made up my mind to play this role well, but in the week after that, I was always swayed by a rumor. It was not that the hungry girl became kind after she became seriously ill, but I'm still far from being able to contact Daria now. Dahlia, the book only says that he is famous as a villain. Dahlia is not the protagonist in this world, just a supporting role. When he was willing to spare the protagonist, he was abandoned by the male protagonist he loved and was destined to die a cruel death. All in all, I am a temporary villain who will get to know each other. I have decided on Dahlia's case. I can't just act like this. No matter what means, I will stay until the end. But the good thing is that there is no Lin Shuyan in this world. Speaking of this Ling Shu salt, it can be regarded as the hand of Giza that made him reborn. These women bully themselves every day. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen to speak softly. To jail this woman at the cost of her own life is the most vicious organization of our time. But these are not important anymore. The story of my previous life has come to a successful conclusion. I vaguely remember that when I opened my eyes, I thought I was not dead by chance. But when a man who claimed to be his father came to me and chatted with me for a few words, I immediately knew where this was. It can be known from Xu Ming that the protagonist of the novel was not helped by Elson, but she was called by different names. She was not the heroine, but the supporting villain. Hearing the sound of someone knocking on the door, I was so depressed that I came back to my senses from the memories. The person who appears is a housekeeper, who is selling for the year. She is just waiting for you. When you are ready, I will take you to the living room. I know, get out. Daria deliberately gave a cold answer, and the most vicious face he could make. Dahlia is the most beautiful girl in the empire, but she is not as powerful as she is. She is just an ordinary and quiet high school student. Because she concentrated on studying. She couldn't watch a common weekend movie. She really regrets it. For her, changing her behavior is really big eyes. Or yell. The housekeeper closed the door in a hurry and left. I was left alone in the walking queen, and my confused mood was inoculated. Is it true that the rumor that the lady has become weird is true? It was hard to calm down from the force of beating the stick bag. Walk around. The housekeeper, who was standing quietly in the middle of the walk, saw his own lady coming over in person. Miss, do you have any instructions? Sorry, whispered Dahlia, quickly ducked away. The butler who stayed behind was so shocked that Dahlia actually apologized. When he was working at the Earl, he had never received an apology from anyone in the Earl's family. But the first apology he heard was from Miss Dahlia. Something worth waking up to. I am the complete reader of this. I don't want to talk about. Dahlia did not intend to appear on the stage, because he knew very well that once he became a character in the play, the stage would definitely image him to death. Because Dahlia is different from the captive Ray, she is not the protagonist, but the enemy of the protagonist. Although I haven't met Fleur yet, I have to find a solution before I see him again. Now I can only stand up and follow the original people. This is good for myself and Fleur. Dally, at this moment, the voice I want in my life reminds me deeply. Daria got off her feet and turned around. It was his father. Dahlia hurried up to him and smiled, playing with his little butterfly. Before Dahlia could let go of Jin Huang, what could he say? I brought your sister here. Dahlia disrespects you. How come the real heroine in this novel appears so early? Dahlia took a deep breath, and prepared to meet the real heroine in this novel. Her hair the color of black tea, her eyes the color of her eyes, her facial features as deep as a melon, and her pleasant features are just like those described in the novel. She's a girl full of gentleness and stability. Anyway, Flory is the protagonist, so there is no need for him to act like the original one and make others hate him. Instead, he treats him well. After gaining a good party. It may be even worse for him. Therefore, Dahlia chose a different plot from her original one. Stretching out his hand and smiling, a sense of satisfaction returns to his face. Faced with the warm greetings, Fleur also smiled because he didn't feel it. However, Fleur's hands in the air kept moving slowly, and he never caught the force of the blow. Only then did Dahlia remember Fleur and Ying Jubing's power education settings. He smiled cordially and held Fleur's hand in person. Fleur had also expressed concern too. Just as the first meeting with Mu Wen was about to end, Dahlia's mugwang instantly penetrated through the gap of Yalua Lei Shuzi. Its beautiful even sound is shocked and distorted. It can't be seen at first. It has a completely different appearance and sound, but there's a scar on the back of Fleur's hand that only Daria can see. That was the scar left on the back of his hand, when he and Lin Shuyan fought against each other a long time ago. What is this? Dahlia blurted out without any delay. There are scars here. Are you hurt? The moment the scar was mentioned, Flory was as cold as ice and pulled back his hand suddenly, and the angelic smile disappeared. The previous injury left 8 horizontal marks, because it was too ugly. So I hid it with my sleeves. Of course, in Dahlia's ears, this was more of an excuse. How did you get injured? Dahlia instinctively began to doubt Fleur in front of her. He carefully recalled the contents of the messed-up original seat. In his original residence, Fleur was not brought to see him so early by his father. Only then did Dahlia realize that something seemed to be unfolding incorrectly. The entire storyline seemed to have gone wrong. Why are you asking this? If not, Flory even used the words that he would never say in the original work. The Count who eavesdropped on this conversation in the Holy Chain also found something he didn't like. He even glanced at Flory. You are speaking very arrogantly. Those heavy and firm words made Flory's face respond to mine. Under the wings of the Earl, Florivi shrank with a cold look on his face. His hunched shoulders and hanging hair reminded me of the angry puppy who got stabbed in the arm when he quarreled with his friends. The scars left at that time. Floret wiped the uncondensed internal water with his sleeve. On the contrary, Daria has a police officer, whose face is more delicate and scary than before. Because the attitude just now and the scar on the back of his hand confirm a hypothesis. Think about it. This is an obvious assumption. Just like possessing a character named Dahlia in the novel, Ling Shuyan can also do it. Since the two of them died at the same time, this is a more reasonable hypothesis. Suddenly Dahlia realizes a terrible fact. Flor may have been fathered by Zero Shou Yanfu. Go to the edge of the roof and close your eyes. Suddenly, there was a sound of the door opening behind me. It might have been the person who was hurriedly going up the stairs. The person coming was followed by the whisper of someone protecting me. When I heard the sound, I looked back and saw the interior, which made me groan and grind my teeth. Envoy Ling Shu, wait a minute, the woman has an angelic face, which seems to combine all the cuteness in the world. Of course, to the Envoy Ling Shu, this face is not cute. You don't really want to jump, do you? You just wrote this to scare me, right? The woman took out a note from her arms. This is a book left by Killishu for her ancestor Tano. Do you think I will be scared if you are like this? Lin Shuyan made Minshu whisper the other person's name, and the ending song that shrank in his stomach slowly started to move. The ending song turned into anger. And the anger immediately turned into a desire to give up. If I can be reborn, I will definitely be born with you. Let me and you being born, growing up and living in the same place made Minshu smile. Minsheng said his trial words of 7 sentences, and 1 long period, so that I can get revenge on you. The blue pill on my back is very low. It is an easy one to jump off. Hi, Lin Shuyan also noticed it. He was pale and started to run over. Wait, no, Li Shuyan, remember this moment and never forget that the day you pay for everything you have done, even if you are still alive, I hope you die miserably. I thought he would laugh at me as usual, but he went to invite Wei Guan and ran over and wanted to grab my hand. Is it because he was afraid of dying? By coincidence, Li Xian also fell down. Since he has always entered Dahlia's mind, is he really reborn with me, just like the characters we possess in novels? She even became the heroine artificially waiting for a happy future. The fire of revenge in Dahlia's heart is rekindling. The memories of the past still pain me, but he can smile and live a happy life. Fortunately, Flor's power is very weak. As long as he doesn't notice the mark on the back of my hand, he can travel all over the world. Dahlia put down Hideko and covered up Shangba, who was in the same position as Flor. He also had a different appearance from his previous life, so it was concluded that Zero Hideo could not argue. If you just stay like this, the whole world will develop according to the original storyline. Ever since I entered this world, I have been thinking about a good life and a happy life every day. But now the opportunity has come to me. If I can, I will willingly accept the role of the evil girl Dahlia. But how can I change the plot? Dahlia has no intention of following the rhythm of the original. Watch this story and I will find it anyway. Native vulnerability. Dahlia jumped up and walked to the desk. He opened the vellum and first wrote down a few events in the circle in his mind. First there will be a debut dance, right? This is the Taiwanese history of the story. According to the original director, Bai and Flor met the southern protagonist Emperor. Floret's innocent and handsome image aroused Noel's interest. From him, Floret realized the autonomy of the army and planned to slowly seduce Nuoa as the story progresses. Recalling the content of the original work, Dahlia pinched the foreign fart pool. Happy ending. I can't let this happen. Now that I have become a villain, there is nothing I can't do. Ever since he saw his half-sister in the study just now, Frol has been looking straight. At this time, the maid on the side saw Florrie's expression and asked, Miss Florrie, do you want to have sex? But Florrie had no choice but to drink. He sold me and got a lot of money. What do I want him to do? Floret's mother worked as a maid in the Count's mansion a long time ago. She accidentally met the master one night and became pregnant with a child. However, in an atmosphere where illegitimate children were not allowed, she was sent to a remote territory. Flor recalled the atmosphere and the heavy light he felt at that time, and frowned unbearably. Suddenly the thunderstorm became sharp, and I drank to the profound maid. Xiaowen didn't have the guts to tell me more about Dahlia. The woman was frightened by Fuluo Lei's reign. A few months ago, she was still the restless, easygoing and innocent girl. Now she seems to have changed into a different person. It feels like she is watching two people. This is what I said after thinking about it. I heard that Miss Dahlia is very kind to His Majesty the Emperor, and this time he appears at the martial arts competition. He will be designated by His Majesty Qin as the female version of Shishin, the Emperor. The astonishing Flore Zeng with his big eyes visits. What kind of person is His Majesty the Emperor? He is the best South American in the Imperial Center. Flore dragged out what he thought was the most important question. Is he married? No, they haven't been together for a long time. The position of queen is still vacant. But the Count believes that Miss Dahlia will become the queen. Flore turned around and asked if I could attend the ball too. Of course, it is because of this that the Earl took the lady under your control. Okay, I understand. You can go out. I need to sleep for a while. The satisfactory answer made Flore smile and get angry. Flore was lying alone on a large bed, which was very suitable compared with the ancient cabin he had been in before. Flore looked at the circular ceiling and fell into the city wire. Although I was afraid of committing suicide by eating rice cakes, I ran over there, but I didn't expect that I would fall together. When I opened my eyes, it felt aggrieved and ran away crying. Not knowing what it was wrong. It was surrounded by people I didn't know, and it made things worse. My eyes were very uncomfortable. The picture you get is very dull. Flore picked up the mirror next to him and admired his new look. It was really good. Everyone was wondering where I belong. It seems that God will not let me die. Flore was still immersed in the thought that he would reach the highest position. In my imagination, I can't help but think about the size of the... But Dahlia's voice suddenly came to mind. From the day she met him, she tortured herself day by day. She even often let him secretly ruin her clothes and embarrass him. But when Flore looked at himself in the mirror again, an obvious plan, enjoy it while you're at it now. I'll take everything away from you soon. Time came to the day of the 5th meeting. Flore was almost penetrated by the perfume. His body exuded a strong fragrance of roses. It was a strong fragrance. Dahlia did not speak, but distanced herself and did not forget to curse. The first sign of discomfort was that Flore took a step back, and then Dahlia breathed a sigh of relief. Together with Flore, it was unbearable to be in the same space. Take care of it, Flore, both of you come here. Their father is not afraid to come over and give them a hug. That person over there is His Majesty the Norhato Saibing Emperor. Go and say hello to your luggage. Bo Ju, who unknowingly walked over to the other side, was greeting the Emperor politely. Your Majesty, thank you for inviting me to participate in the Palace Martial Arts competition. These are the women I have just entered the social circle. I have long heard that these are the 2 flowers that separate the family. These are beautiful faces. As Dahlia approached him, all eyes were on the 2 of them. It is well known that Dahlia had a crush on Noel before he tried to take the throne. In addition, the rumor that Dahlia lured Noel to the throne is known to everyone in the city. Greetings to the sun that never sets, His Majesty the Noble Emperor Norhato Saibing. Daria Sachs has finished introducing herself. At the same time, Dahlia met Noel's eyes. Dahlia, who was assisting, must not have known that Noel did not support her. Flore bids farewell to the Noble Emperor Norhato, who never sets. His green leonie group swayed like a wave. Compared with Dahlia's purple leonie group, which was covered with various decorations and sparkled, it looked very good. Pu Sway, I feel so excited to be here to welcome you 2 for their debut. Which one of you will dance with me? Nola secretly touched the slapped face. Dahlia knew very well that this was the line in his memory. During the assistance, Dahlia took the initiative to approach Sue and was rejected. This was a deliberate attack on his self-esteem. In the original work, the Emperor not only rejected Daria, but also deliberately invited Flore to dance. This scene was the first encounter between the 2 protagonists. Who do you think is a fool? Dahlia looked at the hand in front of her, and secretly held it up. Sister, when I saw Daria quietly withdrawing, Flore Jinhuang made a mistake and jumped. I am very grateful to be asked to dance by such a noble she-male as your Majesty, but today I seem to be in poor health and very tired. With everyone paying attention, Dahlia said something that no one expected, but instead of withdrawing, Daria gave Flore's back a gentle push. I want to ask Ning to make my sister a free dance partner. Hit hard, shout the name of hit hard with all the strength. But Dahlia forgot about the call of the Count and slipped out of the crowd. Noel didn't catch him either. This was the plot that Dahlia wanted. After that, it didn't matter whether Noel and Flore danced or held hands, because it didn't matter to him. His interests already lie elsewhere. Daria walks out of the balcony to the rhythm of the original. After being assigned the sheep tag with the crowd in the hall, there was room for drama. At this moment, Dahlia suddenly envied Flore. She was obviously angry to death that day. But Ling Shuyan became a delicate and beautiful heroine. She thought it feels very atmospheric when you wake up. Who did I think it was? It turned out to be you. Daria heard the sound and knew that this person would definitely come here, so she slowly turned around. A man walked out from the corner, with hair as black as the night sky, facial features with aquatic copper holes in his heart, John Decker, a soldier. He was Noel's first brother. The Emperor's brother. If Noel had not seized the throne, he would have been the one to sit on the throne, and John only takes up a few lines in the novel, which is as small as Daria's. John looked at Dahlia and asked, I thought you would be with His Majesty. I didn't expect you to be here. As you can see, I am alone. John heard Daria's voice and bumped into it. He didn't expect him to answer him. I heard that he wouldn't talk to anyone except His Majesty. The principal of Daria's tears. I didn't expect that His Highness would believe these nonsense. Dahlia randomly recorded a mysterious little voice. If you don't mind, I want to talk to His Highness about the gentle effect of his lowered eyelids. I just hope he can relax his vigilance a little. He had to catch the man in front of him now, because he was the only way to contain Floor. Daria didn't want to make the same mistake in her language writing. Daria looked into John's eyes and said, John, there's something I have to tell you. It's really unexpected that you want to talk to me. I'm a little surprised. John's cold inquirer's eyes flickered with suspicion. It's no wonder that he was roughly shocked. In the original work, Daryl was not only not interested in John Beach, but looked at him. Cheng is the man who lost his throne. He tried in a low voice to the tiger boy, His Majesty, my sister will take the master back to you now. Don't worry. I really just said it to reassure him, but when John came to the company of Flory and the Emperor, he couldn't even raise his eyebrows because as far as he knew, Boju brought Flory to this martial arts meeting to argue with him. But now he was arguing with the Emperor. Facing the suspicious eyes, Dahlia said in a tactful way, Your Majesty will fall in love with my sister. She has adapted to the life of the governor, so she will not set foot behind His Highness's back. Daria is taking John's exam. To some extent, this is an act of promotion, but John obediently stays on the road. In fact, I know some people's past and future. How scary. John jumped, but his reaction was still weak. Are you serious? At this moment, John has regarded him as his style. Hit it hard and smile. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, because now I want to say something more important. John's long, you are Dahlia's eyes. His low-level voice is full of curiosity. John asked Dahlia. It became too scary. Are you willing to marry me? There was a cold wind in the air. Dahlia's hair was blinking. Rich on his cheeks, Vela is on his shoulders. John's gaze even moved there for a moment, but soon returned to his purple eyes. Marry now. What did you say? Faced with a difficult-to-recruit conversation, John's reaction seemed very panicked. After playing a box of IKEA, I asked you if you wanted to go to me, and then added another round, and then we took revenge together. You seem to have misunderstood something. John said lightly, I never thought about Suchio or anything. John suspected that Daria might have been drunk, so he laughed shamelessly and lied after the dinner. At the same time, Dahlia also smiled with him. You call it a day. Don't you, Your Highness, want to let Her Majesty the Queen Mother free at all? John's face finally turned pale. Without giving John time to react, he hit YA and continued. His Majesty the Emperor put your mother, that is, the back of the throne, in the palace, so you were forced to obey orders to govern the land in the north. Am I right? The facts are all the unknown Wang family behind John. He opened his mouth. What are you doing with your mouth in a daze and your face looking down? I just said that I know the past and future of some people. Dahlia smiled and stepped away from the distance. John seemed to be fascinated by a ghost. He followed where he walked. The wind filled Guan Hui's belief that her son was unjustly accused and deprived of his throne. Her Majesty the Queen Mother should have been crying every day to enter the house. She was even pushed to the north. It is difficult to see her, so you have also thought about revenge. The only thing I don't know is that I have a future, and I need an alliance, so now you have the idea of getting married. Dahlia guessed his mood while quietly waiting for his reply, but after John thought for a moment, he still rejected Daria's offer. In his current situation, he couldn't make such a decision. When I got home at night, I was beaten and scolded for a while. He was beaten as soon as he returned to the mansion. He believed that he would fall in love with the Emperor, and expected that he would fire the emperor according to his plan. But not only did he not dance with the emperor, but he announced that he would marry another man as soon as he returned to the mansion. Moreover, he is a wife who has no power, and who brought Zhenglai along during the imperial investigation. Dahlia also knew this was going to happen, because the count had used himself as a bargaining chip. Immediately, the beating was carried out. The next day, Dahlia dragged her hand and looked out the window. The sunshine and hot air in the steaming barrel reminded her of the memories of her previous life. Especially the evil deeds Ling Xiuyan had done, which quickly came to mind. In my previous life, although my parents came first and I spent the initial period alone, I was generally quite happy. But from the day I met young Xian in high school, love began to appear in my peaceful daily life. Lin Xiuyan has an angelic face, but she often uses tricks behind her back to enjoy seeing herself make a fool of herself. As time goes by, Ling Xiuyan hides away from everything about him. That day I left a book with an excuse to die and handed Ling Xiuyan to the building. I didn't expect that Ling Xiuyan would be able to survive all the way and eventually fall together. But she could finally die, Dahlia repeated in a low voice and touched the scar on the back of her hand. Suddenly, you saw a beautiful carriage and a woman in the yard where you were waiting for Hu. It's Floret. The dutiful man he is grooming gets into the carriage. Dahlia knows what Flore will experience from today. It's time to smile and prepare yourself. You have to think of every possible way to give Flore a tragic ending, because he should also feel the pain he went through. Strengthen your strength and put on a Liana tune with complete skills and appropriate level of experience. Then you are ready to go out. Come on. Just after going down the stairs, a person appeared in the living room. Mom, Dahlia smiled miserably on purpose. Mrs. Boju is a woman who loves her daughter very much. Obviously, her daughter looks very similar to her when she was young. So she is even more attached to her. Dahlia briefly chatted with her mother and turned into a secret. But halfway through, Dahlia turned around and headed elsewhere. Only high-ranking nobles knew where Yuan was, but for Dahlia, who couldn't see where he was, it was just a trivial matter. Dahlia sent the carriage back without any reason. It adjusted its breathing repeatedly, and finally reached the zero gear. The door soon opened with the footsteps of the song system. An elderly housekeeper came out of the small door peak. The housekeeper took a belt and looked at his face. A gorgeously dressed girl came suddenly at such a late hour. It made people nervous. If anyone saw it, there were actually weird rumors. Dahlia said politely. My name is Dahlia Margaret. It's even rude to be late. Come and see the electric man right away. The butler's eyes widened and he couldn't tell. How Dahlia knew about John's stay at the bottom of the house was obviously confusing. The butler quickly closed the door and disappeared. Dahlia looked at the night sky and waited for the butler's return. Judging from John's mood in the novel, he would never let himself go back. He was as calm as the emperor. Sure enough, the housekeeper came back with someone. He ordered a white-haired housekeeper. When he saw Dahlia, he lowered his head deeply. Mingho, please come in. After walking up the stairs for a while, I saw a room that looked like an office. Come in. Before the housekeeper knocked on the door, John heard footsteps and shouted from the other side. Dahlia calmly looked away from the door and looked towards the front. The man sitting in front of a big table in the middle of the living room dragged his hands and looked at him. Talia was preparing her luggage, but Johante changed his approach and skipped the formal greetings. After all, this was not the first time they had met, but isn't it a bit inappropriate to not invite you so late? And did you find this place through the ability you mentioned before? Dahlia guessed his mood and Yuanhua smiled. Indeed, and I came here this time to hurt our unfinished topic, a conversation that never ends. This word makes John's eyebrows more awake. I gave you an answer that day. John suspected that Dahlia might have lost her mind because she loved the emperor too much and killed herself on impulse. But John soon saw that this assumption was inconsistent. If what Dahlia wanted was the emperor's love, then you should propose to yourself that you are engaged rather than getting married. Seeing that Senator John was taking a negative attitude, Dahlia decided to take a bigger step. There was no other way. I respect His Highness as a member of Parliament, but now it's dark and dark. I don't know if I can remember it for one night. If I were hanging around outside right now and I got caught, you'd get some tasteless ugly. John had no choice. He didn't expect this woman to be so difficult to give birth. Even though he knew this, he still came to him at this point. John looked embarrassed, thinking that Dudley would be gone for a while, so he had no choice but to make a room for him. Late at night, everyone had already gone to bed, but Dodawaya looked out the window quietly. He was always paying attention to the endless scenery. When the moon was completely hidden by clouds, it was probably about this time. Aunt Dahlia stood up with only time. According to the original description, when the moon was obscured by dirty clouds, there would be big things in the Audi mansion. This is the gift that Daria must keep no matter what. Walking through the long corridor, passing John's office and heading towards the living room and Karen's hall, where there is a balcony that can see the outside. Under the moonlight, a man's figure came into view. It was John. He was eating honey and looking at the scenery. To be precise, it was the direction of the palace where the Empress Dowager was detained. This was a habit he did not give up even after he came to the capital. Sure enough, it happened just like what was said in the novel. Daria looked around. While walking on the other side, I saw a group of armed men approaching John. They were wearing black masks and covering their faces. There were 45 of them at a glance, and the demonstrator, who sent these people, was Deboju, Dahlia's father. Just when the masked men were about to take action, Dahlia shouted, "Get over it, Your Highness Dagong." Yoan jumped and turned around, as if he had encountered a ghost. Also affected by this were the group of weirdos who ran towards John indifferently, waving this. John dodged the sword quickly and accurately like a wolf, but there was not enough room to give way. When the army was about to attack, Dahlia stood between the two waves of people and blocked John's sword with her own arm. My skin was as hot as if it had been touched by fire. I had my teeth punched and spread it out. I saw a few familiar faces in the crowd who were waiting for help. They were soldiers from Count Margaret's family. They couldn't possibly not know who Dahlia was. They were shocked to find out who he was when they evacuated with a plan. He took the sword back and disappeared within a day or 6. Fight hard. A persistent arm quickly stretched out his waist. Push hard to keep the injured arm under the sleeve. Let's start asking, Yoan, are you okay? You're hurt like this and you're still in the mood to care about me. John noticed how much blood was on the cut skin. It turned white after a while. It may be that the poisonous wound on the sword is very unusual. Only Deboju seems determined to kill Yuhan. This was so ridiculous that Yoan didn't even ask if he could leave, so he immediately picked Dahlia up and ran to his room. This situation is beyond Dahlia's medical treatment. Of course, Dahlia can't lie to John. He has done so much. The reason why he dared to stand up is because today's assassination attempt at his original residence failed. He had to intervene to stop it. John's sad war dance deprived him of sympathy by blocking the knife for him, making him feel guilty about himself. But he never thought that he would be hurt again. But the injury was good. Anyway, the goal was achieved. The next morning, Dahlia was awakened by a burst of phone calls. There was water remaining in the blurred vision, and Lun who couldn't see clearly. He frowned and raised his eyelids forcefully. Are you awake? A low voice came from all over the head. When he realized that he was not alone, Matsuki's arms began to exert force reflexively. Turning around, my wife's face was filled with misty success. Dahlia Feli started to support himself. Seeing that Dahlia was recovering well, John breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, you woke up. If you had eaten a little more last night, the poison might have spread throughout your body. Dahlia couldn't help but smile as she heard a hint of concern in John's breath. Looking at the person in front of me who is still giggling, Yoan is so disrespectful. You almost died. Do you know that? You are still in the mood to laugh. Is Jinxiang okay? Aren't you worried now? John's laughter was so loud that it couldn't be heard, but I still wiped the pressed hair with a cold water towel. It was so mild that it made people mistakenly think that the two had been dating for several years. Dahlia just grabbed the towel from John's hand, and John didn't say anything. As a bobblehead thief, the person in Zwan was not caught. Also, I owe you a thank you. The answer is that Zhongjia owes a box of thanks. Work hard, grab the air and drill in. If you are really timid, please reconsider my request. John did not answer his words, but instead interrupted the topic and said that when you were tortured by poison, the first thing I heard you said was like a voice until you wanted to take revenge. You must take revenge, although I don't know who you want to take revenge on. Who is it? But I want to know, what do you want from this marriage? These words made Dahlia's calmness disappear. Even though he tried his best to maintain a calm attitude, he could not help but be the product. John looked at Dahlia's brutal fight, but what he said was, don't worry about it, just say it, otherwise it will be difficult for me to reconsider your request. It's just that she can never be angry. Daria sorted out her chaotic mind and finally made up her mind to figure things out. I want revenge. Dahlia is just John's eyes, and the object of revenge is my sister Floret Margaret. My sister was born into a family of low-level farmers, but she was lucky enough to be discovered and joined the family. John's expression was a bit surprised, but it didn't accuse him of being vicious. It seemed it would take some time to fully understand. I touched the song bar and felt the wound hurt. John's eyes briefly glanced at the breasts. John was silent for a moment and then asked, "Are you desperate for him to avoid His Majesty's favor?" How can I not laugh and be extremely extreme? Why should I extreme him? He is better than me and I need to extreme him. Li Yue put his hands on his knees and looked at him. His Highness asked me to make sure of one thing. I don't love His Majesty the Emperor. Don't believe those non-verbal messages. All in all, it is good for your Highness to form an alliance with me. I know, have you finally accepted it? The corners of Dahlia's mouth softened with joy, just as Dahlia gently supported her. John extended his hand, but there were two conditions. This sentence made Dahlia's mood that was about to jump with joy calm down again. Why does this person have such a tacit understanding? If I could find someone else as my partner, I would never come to him again. But Da's pressure didn't show any disappointment and asked nonchalantly, what are the conditions? First of all, we can't get married directly. We have to get engaged first. If we get married right away, His Majesty the Emperor will be the first to suspect. The indifferent look he gave me on the day of the aroma ball made me feel that he was not sympathetic to me. Daria couldn't help but drag the helpless supervisor. His Majesty the Emperor has no feelings for me. I guess he just took those messages as a joke. That's just your guess. My people all know that you are secretly spying on His Majesty. If you suddenly marry me overnight, everyone will definitely find it strange. Your Majesty, of course, he will also be suspicious. Daria is also thinking about these questions, but one thing is for sure, John is not taking this marriage seriously. In addition to this, there is another thing that Dahlia has to accept. He has lost and added conditions. Even if we get married, you should remember that the only one I can help is you. I will accept all requests from your family. Won't help. Although this was an answer that clearly cleared the line, Dahlia was not disappointed because she never expected John to accept his family from the beginning. Moreover, Wilderberg was on the side of the Emperor, and was one of the main figures who pushed John to hell. However, I have 3 conditions. Since he mentioned one, then I am fully qualified to write my own song. I will listen. Please tell me. First of all, don't be rude to me. Secondly, it cannot be defended. John nodded repeatedly and asked where was the third one. Dahlia mentioned the most important content and said finally, never sympathize with Lilei. John's eyes wavered for the first time. John couldn't reach it. A trace of his words flashed in the corner of his eyes. I'll think about it again. The man who handles the case plays Ihan. His tone is like this. I knew it would be like this. He is really immortal. A few days later, Dahlia turned into Vita Durbo and burned a letter to His Majesty. But the result was the same as what happened to John. His Majesty did not agree with his immediate marriage to John. Every issue stated that the country was in an unstable situation and needed John's support to get along. At this moment, Wilder shouted to the two of them to go to the palace with him to buy. The one who protects the Saibing Empire now is the goddess of water and wisdom. Although the Saibing Empire is a country with religious freedom, in fact, if you don't believe in the state religion, there will be many disadvantages. Therefore, those who work hard for the Emperor Xiaoning also believe in the goddess Shu Ten. Dali didn't want to take care of the warehouse, but he thought that John might also take care of it, so he changed his mind. Maybe he could convince him this time. The wave-like aqua color, and the hand gestures made of silver and white stone are very beautiful. Just as Dahlia was hurriedly selling inconvenient cloth to the end, Wilderberg and Flory were passing in front of him. They were slowing down in front of the carriage. Flory's husband was different from him. He was very common in the wind. The forest stirs green like a silver wind. It's really funny that he is so happy to see Noel. Daria and Flory got into a carriage. Suddenly Flory broke the calm atmosphere and asked, "Sister, do you really want to be engaged to the Grand Duke? Why are you asking this? I already hate being in the same space as Flor." Hearing his voice made Dudley even more impatient. Jian Rui's voice made Fuluo Lei you not realize it. I have met her before. I think she is difficult to get along with, but I am curious when she became so close to you. On that innocent face, I can vaguely feel the hidden heart. Daria secretly bit her tongue, forced a smile, and did not answer. But after a moment, she smiled and said, "There have long been rumors that you are the one who is loved by His Majesty the Emperor." Flor and Wang explained that those are all rumors. So shattered, but full of anticipation, Florie's face was dyed rose-colored. "Do you like him?" Dahlia adjusted her voice affectionately. "It seems to me that he is fascinated by you. When I was drinking tea in the mansion, I noticed that his eyes were always staring at you. If His Majesty really falls in love with you at first sight, then you might be the future queen." "No way." Flory couldn't hold back his expectations and his face turned red. Seeing Flor laughing so hard and screaming, Daria changed his previous attitude and kept thinking about the future for Flor. For his grand plan, Flor must fall in love with the Emperor. The most important thing now is let him once be in the happiness of hope, in his happiest moments, let him be most below. Arriving at the palace, Daria and Flor followed the count obediently. There was just a rule, women could not enter the chapel, so they could only stand in front of the door. While Dahlia was bidding farewell to Talderbo and entering the chapel, she looked at her from all the images. Although she was looking for John's voice, people and horses talk so it's hard to tell. Who is who? Sister, who is that? Look in the direction Flory is pointing. A very conspicuous person stood near the door. That's discrimination against the guardians of the chapel. Aaron Serodi. He's the leader of the great miracles. How does he look like in the novel? I can't remember what kind of existence this guy is in the novel. Just when Dahlia was trying to reminisce, it was probably the end of the service and people started to turn around. The corridor in front of the Labai Hall was filled with people who were waiting for greetings. Why were there so many people who needed to say hello? He secretly took them all. At this time, a familiar voice came to Daria. Daria looked back in surprise. A man in a dark bamboo uniform, with a silver haircut seemed to be here to attend the Tibetan Council. I feel like I haven't seen you for a long time. It's only been a few days, but I think you have become more beautiful. John smiled with a light expression of praise. Dahlia felt that the surrounding wooden light was instantly attracted to her, and she quickly adopted a polite attitude. I haven't seen you for a long time, so I closed my eyes. Seeing His Highness the Grand Duke, Wei Erduju slapped them between the two, then shrunk his mustache and smiled reluctantly. I haven't seen you for a long time. Lady Margaret, are you here to see His Majesty? Master John replied with a smile at his feet. Because it is difficult to talk about secret things in crowded places, Dahlia planned to face John alone in the future, just when he was thinking hard about what to do. Johns knew that he was heartbroken, and strode over and stood in front. Dahlia, I have something to say. Can you give me a moment? I suppressed my jump. The last time we met, he was quite fierce. Why did he suddenly change his gentle attitude towards Tomita's Hongcha gang? You mean with me? Yes, just two people. There was no reason for Dahlia to refuse the question, because he also wanted to talk alone. Huang Zhong's slender face could be seen peeking out from behind John's shoulder. Hearing that the two were preparing to meet alone, Wilderbo interrupted the conversation between the two. Our Debo Bureau turned around, and was worried about being affected by Dahlia. If you have excessive affection for Huang Kilometer, and His Royal Highness, it will be very good. Dahlia knew what Wilderbo was thinking, but she just hoped that her and John's engagement could be in and out, and then serve as a bridge between him and Noel. But now that she and John were so easy, she was afraid that there would be rumors about Feiwing. Suddenly John stood in front of Dahlia. I wanted to discuss the engagement with him. But don't worry, I will send him back immediately. At this moment, John, who was in a bad mood, even waved and took Dahlia's hand and left. Got it, I'll be back soon. Dahlia, who was in low weather and rainy weather, quickly slipped out. Earl Wild's face was stained with copper color, but he cared about other people's eyes and it was difficult to wipe them away. John took Daria to the busy street behind Li Tang. There were very few people coming and going, which was very convenient for conversation. I am curious why you called me out alone. How are you doing during this time? Yes, I'm fine, but you don't look fine. Didn't I say His Majesty wouldn't allow it? Sure enough, John mentioned that the Emperor did not allow the two to get married. Dahlia patted her chest confidently. It's okay. He will agree sooner or later. John Lan Yang book this Liu Hai bites his head in shame. I don't know where you get your confidence. But I want to ask Miss Dahlia. You clearly said you don't love His Majesty. Then why are you here today? Dahlia breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out that he thought he was here to see Noel today, so he decided to clearly state his purpose without violating John's new meaning. I didn't come to the palace today to see His Majesty the Emperor. He put mugwong on a table from John's handsome face and spit out the matter. I came here today to build a saint, Miss Herode referendum. You know Miss Herode referendum. I want to talk to her. Daria calmly adjusted her voice and deleted it in anticipation. Her eyes flashed with light. On the contrary, perhaps it was an uneasy premonition. John took a step back, and Dahlia followed closely, closing the distance. He tilted his head and looked at the other person. John's power is the condition he must have to do these things. Can you help me? This is a very ridiculous question. The chapel of the deserted palace means that men are allowed in and out, including the emperor. The only exception is the holy girls. Only she can enter there. John is also aware of this fact. In fact, Dahlia wanted to see Xingnu because she was hiding some secret power. Initially, Daria's plan was to exact revenge without straying too far from the original story. According to the original story, County Floor will ally with the emperor. I need to help John to seize the throne. And Dahlia's plan was to cruelly tell him the truth when he was in the midst of the god floor. But doing this is extremely risky, because Ling Shuyan will most likely change the plot of the story. So I need more stops and more Yujun, and this saint is an important figure. Not only will she not be restrained by Noel, but she will also lose power. If she can really be persuaded to become his Mingjun, this revenge battle can be say half the battle is won, but obviously these cannot be told to John, so Daria can only lie and say that she wants to see what He Xingmin is looking for. Then he pretended to be very excited and said, we need him to witness our engagement dress. I also want to say hello to him in advance, but John just can't get over it. Is there no point in trying to persuade him? Xingnu's blessing will not change just because you got to know him well in advance. Although Dahlia's expression did not change, she scolded John in her heart. Why is it so difficult for this stupid man to do a favor? But I never thought that John suddenly changed his face the next second and said with a smile, okay, let me do you this favor. Then the scene changed and he stared at Dahlia again and asked, but what are my benefits? In this process, I will also consider the benefits. Sure enough, I am not a man. This is all for our future trial plans. Do you still have to be so light with me? John Qingheng said calmly, you once said that an engagement is ultimately just a transaction. Looking at it this way, Dahlia no longer complained, but considered what price to pay. The surprising thing in the next moment is that John received what he wanted first. There will be a salon in a few days and I will attend as His Majesty's agent. Killing the dragon reminds Dahlia of the original work. He carefully reviewed the contents of the aid in his mind. After a while, a series of machines flashed. He clapped his hands gently. Are you talking about the salon held at Pushfar's house? Meanwhile, John's lips will harden into a straight line. How do you know? You wouldn't have known if you hadn't been invited. That's because obviously it was his fault. If he told the plot in advance, he would need a reasonable explanation. But in desperation, he let it slip. Fortunately, John was deceived by Daria before and he has the ability to predict the future, so he imagined the scene on his own. John is thinking hard. There is a problem coming on the day of the salon. I hope you can help me deal with it. Deftly Qing Qianyu Khan explained Dahlia Jinya's mastery of TIs. It turns out that this man also has times when he is confused by others. Dahlia recalls the content of the aid. This salon promoted Noel and Flora's police intelligence. It can be regarded as an important plot in the development of the story. If you take a closer look, his tone and expression don't seem to be the kind of person you hate. Could it be that he is from Noel's group? Although Dahlia has admired many candidates in her mind, she really can't think of a suitable candidate except Wilderbogen. Daria's intersection repeatedly refuses to pretend. John's proportion in the original work is not large, so it is difficult to grasp the details in advance. Is this person a woman? It's a woman. Johnny felt impatient when he thought about it, and he couldn't help but frown. Is it someone His Highness has seen or is it someone the other party has seen? You really asked about it? It's the latter. After hearing the answers to the additional questions, Dahlia had a general feeling. It seemed that he was John's suitor. Although he was ostracized by the emperor, his appearance and taste were enough to attract all the women. Dahlia didn't want Shu Hua at first, but she thought that if she didn't even help him, how could John take him to see the saint? So she simply accepted the task of being wise. Dahlia patted her chest and said confidently, as a person who is about to become Da Gong Fei, I can still do this well. John was satisfied at first and then smiled deeply and said, I'm glad you can be so understanding. Let's go. Dahlia mentioned the group version and walked back and forth with him. John seemed very satisfied with his attitude. Maybe he can see the Virgin today. Dahlia, Count Wilder, Dahlia and John were still standing in the hall waiting, with uneasy expressions on their faces. Flor was staring blankly at the ceiling, his shoulders swollen with exhaustion. The conversation has taken a long time. I'm sorry, Lady Margaret. I'm right, John. Bowser obviously didn't dare to say anything more. At this time, John was about to go with the Count to the room where the state meeting was held. Before leaving, John took out a box from his pocket. Where was it? And I said it in a strong voice that anyone can hear. I only have something to give to the priest. Please deliver it to me. When I heard about Magdalia, the priest, I knew that this was the special form of the saint. The surrounding eyes also naturally turned to him. Hezi and Dahlia's hand became his companion in and out of the church. Their perfect acting skills almost made people applaud. He is indeed a smart man. My vision is correct. Dahlia was satisfied. The nod is a good introduction. The only one, Deborah, looked at him in the distance with his mouth open like a chicken. He seemed to be curious about what happened to Dahlia. What happened to Dahlia? Why did you call him? Boju was too panicked. He didn't know what to do. He just looked at Flory in turns. And Dahlia's. Just hold on to the box tightly. It's okay. Your Highness just asked me for a small favor. Go quickly. I will help you with me. Flory didn't know what was going on and didn't know what to do. His big eyes looked around as uneasily as a rabbit. After leading everyone away, Dahlia taught the prisoner Lua Lei to quickly tell Tang to run away. But Flory pretended to be innocent, with big eyes. The ground temperature dropped weakly. Where are you going? There are many people who are patient. Just follow me. Flor followed Dahlia at an inconvenient pace. Just when Dahlia turned her head, Flor's cold nose had already been engraved with the words Lang Mo. My legs hurt so much. Why is this man always so delicious to me? Floret made up his expression into a speechless expression. What about the father? Dahlia said without looking back. Didn't you hear just now? He went to attend the state meeting, which may take several hours. Dahlia couldn't care about it. There is only one thought in the minds of others, that is, how to explain the situation when they see the saint later. Is the rumor that Saint Helen can predict the future true? Dahlia tried hard to be correct with half expectation and half curiosity. Saint Helen Cerudi. She is the youngest daughter of the Cerudi family. She was dragged by God and became a priest. Now she is second only to the entire Holy Miracle Group in terms of strength. According to the description of the aid, wherever God goes, there will be a person who conspires to poison the throne. That's why Noel has always been identified as the throne. Choose the uniform first, but because his brother Joran and Noel were close friends, he was still protective of Noel and Joran. The original owner did not explain the reason in too much. He just said that he was loyal to the late emperor. Daria came to Li Beitang, the blue pig. Fulale, you are waiting here to be raped. Fulale hurriedly grabbed his chest and shook it gently. Sister, you don't want to leave me alone. People are here. Seeing that Dahlia didn't say anything, Flor grabbed his hand deeply. Daria turned around impatiently and saw Flor's face. The feeling of being caught by Gob reminded him of his past memories. Instantly, a feeling of bone-crushing hair came over him. Even though he has much more power in this world than Flor, the dark memories left in his mind are still as grey as they are now. Let go of me and give him a hard slap to break the back of his hand. The white back of Flory's hand was suddenly hit hard. Flory has already let go of his hand to avoid being stunned and hurting. His eyes, hit the force, ignore the fast-beating Xing, pretend to be nonchalant and drink to him. You dare to let him die outside. The guidance in my heart makes Flor's leader very different. I will explain it carefully. I'm sorry. Seeing the expression on Flory's 7 bombs, Daria felt like a contestant. Answering with a false heart only made people angry. Then he said coldly, just wait here. His Majesty the Emperor will pass by here soon. If you see him, please give him a good greeting. Will His Majesty come back here? I heard that His Majesty will pass by here. Fulale's expression was instant. There is no cake in the restaurant. Seeing Flory's stone-faced expression, Dahlia felt extremely ridiculous, but this was the smile he wanted. Let him immerse himself in happiness now, and then push him down below. The extreme contrast will make people excited. While pressing hard, he waited for thunder to fall on his belly, while he turned around coldly. The church is in the air of experience. Different from wandering without color, the chapel has a more mysterious feeling because it only has black and white columns and decorations. Magicians can be seen escaping from every corner of the huge chapel. The magicians here have received official permission from the royal family, and they can control those who use magic unjustly. Issue 10 is a blunt step forward to Dahua. The saint is in the inner room. Dahlia even walked in the direction she pointed. Sure enough, there was a door on the wall near G10. Dahlia knocked on the door gently, but could not hear the memories inside. A knight near the door opened the door curtain, and then the movement of the car owner behind him was recorded. Not only did Dahlia dare to explore, she was worthy of being a saint, and she even used this method to communicate. Dahlia held her waist and Xiaodong did not look at him. And Dong also chased him with curtains. At this moment, the person behind the hyphen suddenly spoke. The noble lady Count Margaret came here to find me. I was surprised. There is a strong lily smell coming from the curtains. Even without opening the curtains, the camera can tell who the owner of the voice is. The unpretentious temperament has already been integrated into the layer of heroic spirit. Xingnu's voice is far higher, sharper and more distant than imagined. The venom and calmness of her voice are completely reflected in her voice. Unknowingly, Dahlia felt that the feeling of seeing had disappeared, and a strange calmness entered her heart. Dahlia said to Xingwu behind Lianzi. His Highness the Grand Duke said that there was something. That was too late to offer, so I will wait for him on behalf of the Lamp Gate. Are you talking about John de Carl's military exploits? The curtain was pulled open before Dahlia had a chance to fight. Behind the curtain, a woman whose face was not covered by a long veil quietly appeared. Pusu revealed an elegant and graceful dress. It felt like looking at a wedding dress. The door opened slowly, and the handle waved one of the discriminatory hands. Please go this way. Dali followed the prompts and crossed the threshold. As soon as he opened the curtain, he was so frightened that he couldn't breathe. This is actually a completely different room from the chapel. The whole room is full of mysterious atmosphere. Nice to meet you, Miss Margaret. At some point, Xingnu had already touched Daria's back. The sudden voice made Dudley suppress a sigh. Although his face is exposed and his expression is invisible, I don't know what to do. He seems to be smiling. This person is Saint Hymen. She led Dahlia to the table. Don't be afraid to sit here. Daria obediently walked closer and sat down on the chair. His heart was still messy from the shock just now. Then he carefully placed the box that Emperor John had brought on the table. Although the good legs were an excuse to see Helen, this matter must be resolved first before we can get to the point. At the same time, only in this way can the other party's suspicion and vigilance be completely eliminated. But when Dahlia raised her head again, she suddenly became stiff. This is because Helen has put away the mist and is looking at herself. It was an eye that moved so much like a burning flame. It was a bit like Tom Hongdan with ears, but a little bit more than before. If it were a beautiful color like a massage shrimp. My God, it had such obvious eyes. It was more beautiful and moving than what was described in the novel. Just when Dahlia couldn't raise the money, Mr. Helen said in a low voice, "Welcome to Dahlia, I've seen through you." Hearing these words, Daria's heart dropped with a heavy thud. He tried hard to appear less nervous and managed to speak in a calm voice. What are you going to say? In his native place, he was deeply favored by God. He possessed wisdom and the ability to change people's hearts, but build strength and make money slowly. Uneasy thoughts never come to my mind. Did he see my soul? At that moment, the inexplicable uneasiness pressed on my chest like a mountain and spread to Daria. Hylun raised her head and stared at Dahlia and asked, "Dahlia, I'm not right. I should ask, Madam, why are you trapped in this place?" At that moment, an inexplicable uneasiness pressed down on her like a mountain. Dahlia felt guilty, and she kept sweating on her face. The two-way flame-like coordination in the sea ship will be able to use one's own flexibility. Dahlia, what should I do if I have a blank day at this moment? How should I change my mind? Isn't the question just now really about seeing through my identity before I can output it? All kinds of thoughts in my mind are as messy as a ball of thread. If you have really seen through yourself, then whatever you say now is just an excuse. But if you keep quiet like this, you will be more suspicious. Just when Darius was trying to find an excuse, there was a slight whisper of disrespect, and Daria looked away. He saw Helen's whole body slightly deleted and waiting. Yes, he read it right. Helen was smiling. Helen took off her hooded shirt and smiled and spoke. I was joking. You were nervous, but your reaction just now was so cute. Daria realized then that it was just a joke. But she was still a silent complainer. You felt that you were very supportive. Helen suddenly stopped smiling, walked to the table, and picked up the box that Daria brought. I was very curious about what His Highness Dargong brought me. As soon as his thin fingers pressed the lock, the box was opened with a sound. The inside of the nucleus is covered with a layer of white astronomical content. There is a sparkling thing stuck in the Arctic grass in the middle, which is a small ring. Oh my God, I thought this was just a rumor. With a surprised tone, the woman's lips in the low rain changed into the original shape. Although I don't know what Heroine was surprised about. Excitement flowed into her voice. I think His Majesty Dargong really loves her. I'm so surprised that she even asked me to try on your engagement ring. Engagement ring. Dahlia, who was originally relaxed, raised her voice again when she heard this sentence. She didn't expect that John's competition for her was a ring. But how could Heroine see at a glance that this ring was for engagement? In his opinion, this is just an expensive ring. Helen suddenly asked about this. Are you curious about why I knew this was an engagement? Dahlia was also surprised, but Helen didn't explain too much. She picked up the box and put it in Dahlia's face. The borrowed value appeared in front of Dahlia. If you look closely, you can see that there is indeed a very large and unglamorous breast. Helen pointed to the center of the breast to take a closer look at the bottom of the breast. Follow the position pointed by Helen and open it into the ring. There is a pattern of a white capsule inside. Helen explained that this is the totem of the Dikagia tribe from generation to generation. After hearing these words, Dahlia became the official of the Ming dynasty. This is the totem of the John family, which is something made by the former royal family. But Daria thought of the copper color of John Hennel and whispered, this color is very suitable for His Majesty the Emperor. Dahlia, who was unconsciously thinking about Tulu, realized her mistake and hurriedly avoided her mouth. Dahlia suddenly felt 14W's eyes piercing her face. Helen's smile disappeared. And she felt a slight feeling from his expression. This was Noel and John both felt the power of microejaculation countless times in front of them. It's funny, Helen looked at the ring and said to herself, this ring was not made for the next imperial heart son, but now it has become such an incompatible thing. With an inexplicable enchang, Helen put the ring back in Hezi. Inside, Dahlia seemed to be affected by Helen's elegance, and she couldn't help but breath. The truth is unpredictable. How could he eventually become the moon of the empire? Dahlia spoke out her inner thoughts without any secret. This was also what John meant, but in the next second, he lost sight of someone beside him, beating his cock and dancing with his mouth. When Daria realized his mistake, Helen waved to him, it's okay. You were right. Just when Daria was thinking about how to alleviate the problem that Ambassador Helen had just said, why did you come to see me this time? If it was just a gift, His Highness would have taken another photo and dealt with it. Didn't you ask His Highness? Did you ask him to help introduce you to me? Dahlia finally smiled. The woman in front of her is also equivalent to hair. Not only is she smart and intuitive, she is indeed the perfect candidate for the hair at the end. Daria changed her posture to be more upright, and looked at Helen's red eyes. Actually, before I realize the engagement between His Highness Dargong and I want to ask you something. But before that, Daria should ask first. You must have heard of it. Let's get engaged. How could I not know it even though it has been spread throughout the whole world? Helen replied with a smile, her hair swaying gently. After checking the surroundings to make sure no one was eavesdropping, she finally revealed the purpose of his visit. I want to marry His Highness Dargong, not get engaged. For a while, Hai Lunbu looked at his eyes carefully, then tilted his head slightly and frowned. It wasn't until Dargong coughed twice that Helen came back to her senses. I don't know what you are talking about. Engagement is like the road to marriage, isn't it? This is indeed a reasonable question. No one in this world will understand what I say, but there is a reasonable excuse. Dario Wu said this because I am worried that I will regret my great work. I am very uneasy. The human heart is the most dangerous thing in the world. It is ever-changing. Even the most attractive people may be caught at any time for unknown reasons. If you don't have confidence in this intention, then no matter who you are engaged to, you will never communicate without any means. So Dahlia gave this sinful and core and reasonable excuse. Helen is convinced. Are you serious? Dahlia nodded excitedly, showing his sincerity. Although he is not a Yunan, he hopes to get married as soon as possible, but he is sincere. Helen couldn't help it, so she put her hand on the crystal ball and closed her eyes. Its soft eyelids and thick eyelashes were all moving. Did it come with the scent of the crystal ball? Damn it, with a kind of nervousness, I took a big mouthful of saliva and waited for its answer. The help emitted by the crystal ball becomes more and more medicinal, shining like stars in the night sky. The inside of the crystal ball becomes more and more blurry. To be precise, it becomes the color of a soul pig. The ocean ship tilts its head left and right, and the crystal ball floats. The pigs are also shining here, but the color is noble. When Helen let go after a while, the crystal ball also returned to its dark color, and turned back into an ordinary bead. Helen Ehan said, "Nothing answers me. I can't hear God's guidance." Dahlia couldn't help being disappointed and took a deep breath. His original plan was to use God's question to quickly hold a wedding and use gratitude as an excuse to suggest what to do in the northern territory and then let Helen become a perfect friend. Red Tail's plan started from it's really disturbing that he changed back from the beginning. You can go to the temple to make some offerings first, and then I will go to Shu to ask God for guidance. After hearing this, Dahlia hoped that the firebird would be died again. What offerings? Hailuan's happy joke. If you go to Gongting, the goddess may know your members better. Helen stood up and said, although I don't know if God will benefit from his sin, I will have to do some psychological work for your engagement ring sooner or later. You can arrange a public ceremony first. I will talk to you about revenge when God's profession comes down. Dahlia followed him from although standing up from the chair is an unexpected development. It is not the worst direction. I walked to the door and wanted to thank them. Just when I was about to say goodbye, I heard a voice from life. A child from a strange world, just wait for the results quietly in these 10 days. Su Zhong's words hit your ears, saying it was not Helen's voice. These words were like a stone song on your shoulders, making Dahlia unable to touch him. After the sound disappeared, he was surprised when the broadcast came. However, there was no artist where Helen was standing. There was only radicalism in the room. As if no one existed from the beginning, Dahlia walked out of the deserted chapel and returned to floor. At this moment, he was looking up at the sky in a daze. Although he didn't know what he was thinking, there was a trace of impatience on his tired face. If it was Floor in the original work, he would never make such an expression. I'm coming. Hearing the sound, Lorelei's eyes turned to Dahlia. His impatient expression instantly dissipated, replaced by the teacher's uniform. After practicing the instantaneous change of expression, although Dahlia played the GP song, she still raised the corners of her mouth calmly. Sister, you are back. Have you met the Holy Lady? What did you talk about? Dahlia was very impatient. Just when he was about to answer, he remembered the footsteps of the crowd behind him. Dad is coming back. Dahlia explained clearly on purpose. Dad, have you seen His Majesty? Maybe it's because the state meeting lasted too long. Everyone's skin is spreading on their faces. The same is true for Earl Wild. As for Dahlia's question, I haven't seen His Majesty the whole day since Wilderbo's army has not entered. I was deeply disappointed with this result, so I clicked on it as I thought. I had been waiting for so long, but I didn't expect the record waiting for me. At this time, Whitey Boju reminded me that there is a salon today. Maybe we can meet His Majesty there. Brother Whitey Boju said that both of you must attend, but the next second Dahlia went to say regretfully, Dad, I am not in good health, I think I have to go back. The shouts coming from the lightning class will come before Daria has finished speaking. Daria, do you know what you are talking about? Did you refuse to participate because of His Majesty's majesty? Have you forgotten that you like His Majesty? Dahlia completely ignored Count Verdui's words. He is such a loser who sells female ball dragons. He really wants to trade himself for the position of Emperor. Count Margaret. The voice coming from behind made Daria's heart shrink. The Count also made a sound of 4 or 4 and took a step back. Following the sound, he saw a man with raven hair washing his hair slightly and smiling. Maybe he heard the conversation between the two. John said to Dahlia, my dear, let me take you to the certificate gate. Dahlia wanted to agree, but the Count suddenly came in. Your Highness, we are about to get up and kill the dragon. Why let a person who is not feeling well kill a dragon? Yoann interrupted Bo Ju 1111's cute words with windy mouth lines. When she gently held Dahlia, it's so uncomfortable to see my fiancé in discomfort. Please forgive me Zizi. Floor's lips opened in awe as he watched, half in envy and half in pain. But his setting is that he is not powerful, and the look of his eyes closed is very ridiculous. It is impossible for the Earl to refuse Joanne. In this world, from the moment Hong gets engaged, Dahlia's power to act is no longer comfortable, and all belongs to John. The Count also knew this very well, so he did not dare to be born again to stop it. "Dad, I'll have a chat with him and I'll be back." I heard his whisper, but I felt that my expression became brighter now. Then Dahlia left the Count and Florrie behind, and followed John's footsteps. Dahlia left Boju and Flore behind in life, and followed John's footsteps to the far pillar. In the palace, lovers, no matter how public they are, live side by side, but the two of them don't seem to care. After putting some distance between himself and Boju, John asked how was it. "Can we still talk to Shenbang? You reminded me of Dahlia, who had no ring, and you kept holding him to God with a forced smile." His face will move slightly. John's attitude was as calm as if he was talking about someone else's business. "Of course, I've always been with you. I thought I'd give it to you when I met you." Daria gave a slight sigh. She always felt that what John said didn't sound like the first time they met each other sincerely. He didn't even blink. John Tiezui said helplessly that this is actually His Majesty's fate. Dahlia waited for the unexpected medical answer and lowered her eyes. "Order? What order?" John whispered into Dahlia's ear. "Your Majesty ordered me to be nice to you until we get engaged, including your family." John's expression was calm, and there was a sense of rebellion in his voice. Not to mention the strength. I remember letting go of his hand that was almost touching him. It's obvious that he hates it, but he still shows pretense in everything. It's really amazing. This man is the one with the best acting skills. Yuhan suffered from headache for the first time. This is not an irritability, but a confused reaction. "Why do you think your reaction is so cold? How much the outside world likes His Majesty in the boat, but why can't I tell from your attitude at all?" "Don't worry about that, bed safety is standard." Just when Dahlia wanted to explain further, someone was actively running around on the other side. There is a step on the demon with a royal apprentice case. It can be seen that Noel is missing. At this moment, the Earl saw Shikongya running towards him. Dahlia inferred from this that the person should be Noel's personal servant. Otherwise, as Count Wilder, he would not care so much about a servant. In the realm of Daria's differences, I have already stopped in front of them. I said it from the steamboat. His Highness Dadong must let me take you to call. Then Dahlia, who played from the right, added, "His Majesty asked to see Miss Dahlia." Dahlia was accidentally shot by the gold mine of the unknown development island. She looked up to see John. Why did he suddenly scream? John's eyes are similar to his, but his expression still maintains the same expression. Deborah came forward to ask about this matter. "Has His Majesty taught my second daughter?" But it was only with bare hands. Obviously Noel had no intention of seeing Floret. Boju's face turned pale with disappointment. Flore also showed a look of disappointment. Looking at the lost figures of the two, Dudley felt very funny. Both of them were of the same virtue. Jian bought bones and was disappointed. Finally, escorted by John, Dahlia came to the Emperor's dining room. Although the Emperor personally saw it, non-royal women were still not allowed to enter it. So Dahlia consciously stopped on the threshold of entering the bedroom. Dahlia carefully inflated her feet and watched the video. Noel is sitting at a table, enjoying a sumptuous meal in the front right. Far away from the table where Lita was working, the public hall musicians were picking up their instruments, showing calm colors. It's just that maybe it's not Noel's preference. From his expression, I can sense boredom. John is here. Nola put down her fork and wiped her mouth with a piece of paper. "Brother, you're here." Noel's eyes suddenly turned to the door of Dahlia's wall. As soon as their eyes met, Dahlia went to work first. Nuo-san is his face and his mouth, his grey hands are his intention. "What? Why are you like this?" Seeing Noel's behavior, Dudley frowned without hesitation. "What happened? How long has it been since he suddenly became so friendly to me? I will never forget the way he looked at me that day in my life." But Noel just watched Dahlia's transformation and was not there. He turned around and started talking to John. Dahlia, on the other hand, showed a lot of inner troubles. Why did she ask me to come in since she was the two of them? Sishu's impatient temper came up. Hong had been standing since the beginning, and his legs were turning in pain. After a while, the two of them ended the conversation. John walked out thoughtfully and asked for a call. John stopped in front of the pillar and looked back to see Dahlia's classmates from the foreign gang. His blue glasses must be clear. He wanted to see what happened to the rough sea water. Why are you like that? Expression. Dahlia sensed something was wrong and asked a question. John was illuminated by a strange emotional dragon, and his head grew bigger. In fact, the date of returning to the north was postponed indefinitely. He said something that Dahlia didn't expect at all. He made a big statement and yelled. Didn't he say that it was just during this time? John didn't explain too much. He just put the substance in front of his mouth and adjusted to the quietness of the blow. Then Hengu said that this was His Majesty's guidance, and he could only follow it. Dahlia couldn't figure out the original rumor, but she also asked Master Noel if he had asked about Gufflaw's lover. John's face was lost and his lips were forgotten with a confused look. No, Your Majesty did not provide your sister at all. Dahlia couldn't help but talk about it with disappointment. It seemed that she had to find a way to get them to wake up quickly. If Flor was unhappy, even if revenge was successful, its power would only be limited to the lobby. The difficult Huang Dong Chuyu is over. It has been a week since the Major, but just today, I suddenly heard from the ladies in the mansion that they were discussing Florin's recent phone call. Dahlia took a look and found that the person who was tumbling was the closest thing to Flor. Looking at his every move, he seemed to be aware of 107 Shao. It could be seen that Flor seemed to have exposed his mochi, but on the contrary, the woman who was assigned to Flor as a tutor loved her very much and often praised Flor's learning ability. Dahlia, who was in her room, seemed to have seen these things before. The tutor's voice was so loud that she could hear it clearly even through a wall. Miss Dahlia, please pay attention. Don't stop. On the contrary, the tutor assigned to Dahlia is very troublesome. Thinking about this former member of the Yuan dynasty, who was added by Decca, was not selfless. He was John's most useful assistant. Here we come specifically to deliver the Dahlia Emperor's legislation and basic education courses. But fortunately, Dahlia retained the news that he had studied hard in his previous life, so it was easy for him to master this knowledge. It was not until after finishing a lot of homework that it was time to rest. Dahlia kept her tired body on the bed and forgot about the ceiling. It was said that the salon at the Pucifer family was about to start. Now Dahlia needed to think about it. He carefully hid the dresses in his wardrobe and bag, and played a dress-up game in his mind, but none of the clothes were correct, not even the joint-style Wuhue Liani group. It was really ridiculous. In the 5 sessions of the salon, you must be most discerning. Dahlia suddenly remembered that he hadn't had time to check the invitation from the quarantine, but after opening it, I found that there were 2 love bodies inside. One was for himself, and the other was for John, who invited Flory. He also emphasized that Flory's love body was designated by His Majesty. I was angry when I saw it. With 2 invitations, Hen did not expect that John also gave Flor his love, but after seeing John explain that this was Noel's request, his mood suddenly improved again. He was finally interested in Flor. Dahlia looked small and was full of expectations in her heart. Although it was very unfamiliar to attend with Flor, I thought that he would be distracted by Noel's other pursuits. I didn't look forward to it if I just pointed out possible aggressive imagination. I stood up and looked out the window. The bright summer sunshine was dazzling. Looking at the long shadow under my head by the window, I remembered what happened in the church. Children of this world, just wait for the results with joy these 10 days. Every time you think about that day in the chapel, this voice always lingers in your ears. Dahlia looked at the sky and fell into Chen Sai. Is that really the voice of God? What result did he ask me to wait for? If the content of God's realm is to help me, I have also thought about sincerely releasing this God's command. God's thoughts will never stop. Never heard of my taste. The sudden force of the Force came back to greet me. The kingdom of God passed me by once, and the only time was the day when I jumped from the rooftop. I really got my wish and was reborn into this world, and it also softens your inflammation. Dahlia tightened her fists. The meaning of her rebirth is to be responsible. I can't waste this opportunity. This is my goal in life. Miss, there was a sound at the small door, and the maid outside came in. The hand is still lying on the hand brought by the heart. Dahlia gathered her emotions. Now she feels like she is playing a level-breaking game. At least she has to pass the level in front of her first. The mansion where the dragon was held was much bigger and more gorgeous than Dahlia had imagined. The dress I am wearing now is made by hand from the best designs suitable for the interview. Dahlia personally selected the design suitable for the interview after many inquiries. The dress is made to order with caution. The waist is made to look really like an ant's waist, highlights Dahlia's breasts, which are about to fall, and Shuz's breasts and waist are peeled off like a crotch with a slight shake. Take care of it, miss. I heard someone suddenly call my name. I looked back and saw that the person was John. John is wearing gorgeous and elegant clothes today, coupled with his innate beauty, performing the perfect yellow gas. Thank you for your invitation. I don't know how to describe this kind of wish. Let's go. John smiled and took out his gloved hand. Passing through the courtyard and entering the house, all the eyes inside were on these two people. The line testing and guessing games were free and in-depth. Most of the voices were discussing the daily and pressure. There is a voice saying that he probably didn't get his majesty, so he turned to work as a part-time job. The power button moved his lips, but he was not affected. This is also thanks to Lin Xiuyun. In his previous life, he was the enemy soul. If he would be pampered and jealous no matter where he went, he would have been used to it for a long time. What are you thinking about? Seeing Police Officer Dahlia with her eyes closed, John Chingching asked, It's nothing. I just think this house is beautiful. Dahlia ignored the suspects around and sighed. Again, John shares Dahlia leaves the hall and heads to the balcony. You look nervous. Dahlia smiled and said, It's a lie to say that I'm not nervous. After all, this is the first time we've participated in a royal dragon slaying since the news of our engagement. John looked at him with gentle eyes. It's okay. I just get used to it. It seems you will say welcome. Looking at John's calm demeanor, I guess it's true. He has been taken to all kinds of sandstorms since he was a child. Maybe he has long been accustomed to such occasions. John walked into the deep side and recorded a confused expression on this sentence. What does that mean? Dahlia put her arms around her brother, turned her head, and said lightly that the sight around her was very confusing when she came in. They were not interested when they were busy protecting the Bagwo people under the power, but when they arrived in Didu, all the women seemed to want to see it. Beautiful face under electricity. John, who was listening now, smiled cheerfully. Are you jealous? Look at it like this. Jealousy. Taiwan joke. How could I be jealous? Then Daria asked, getting on with the topic. Well, I don't want to waste my time on this meaningless topic. Let's just talk. What do you want me to do? John's lips twisted, recording a rope of satisfaction. When he showed his heart, he sometimes recorded a despicable little smile. If it weren't for his handsome appearance, his smile would appear to be arrogant. John took a step further, and suddenly pointed at the bottom of the balcony, with his wet juices. Following the straight fingers, a familiar face appeared among the elders in the yard. Dahlia suddenly suffered from coal bucket. Flora actually comes into the garden, and the politician talks to someone. Is this the person John is referring to? Johns will realize what Dahlia is currently saying, and then adds, You see your daughter standing next to your sister. Dahlia put away her show and nodded with disappointment. After confirming the answer, I looked down and saw the woman's voice more clearly than before. The name of the person John so refers to is Joanna Heber. According to Dahlia, he will take over Noel's order and the political peace of Puxifer in the future. John explained to the side, I don't know what Uncle Herbert said to His Majesty, but His Majesty ordered me to accompany him today. Daria was furious after hearing this. The news of the engagement must have spread throughout the palace, but she still proposed such a situation. Daria finally understood. No wonder John invited her to the salon. It turned out that someone was restored even to herself. Dahlia's eyes became sick, but when she said that she dared to follow my fiancé, she was such a dreamy girl. After listening to Dahlia's words, John laughed like a mask. This was the first time he laughed from the heart today. I don't think anyone can sing more harmoniously than you. Daria caught Li Fu and said goodbye. Don't worry, wait for my good news. Minling's news spread all over the country that he was going to be engaged to John, but now His Majesty wants him to accompany another woman. Isn't this obviously poaching? Dahlia's eyes turned cold. He would never allow this to happen. But he was not afraid that John would face the epidemic, but he was worried that the revenge plan would be difficult if one person from the long position came in. Follow the direction of Yuan's finger and see it. After confirming Gan Rao's target, Dahlia grabbed Li Fu and said goodbye to him. Please wait a moment. I'll be there soon. Although the primary goal is to disturb Qiaoan, I just saw Flor so happy and felt uncomfortable and masturbated. In the previous life, this woman allowed herself to have sex in front of her classmates. He has been squeezing himself as a minister. If he hadn't wanted to let him experience the pain of his previous life, I would have crushed him with my own hands right now. But during the time when Dahlia was complaining, the people downstairs were more courageous than me. The two people who were talking downstairs just now have disappeared. A search has yielded no results, but at this moment, a person suddenly appeared in front of me and was friendly with me. Ms. Y.A., long time no see. Dahlia also recognized this Amy Pulin, who is also Noel's suitor. I don't want to get too entangled. After all, there's still a side mission that has not been completed, but some people in Naiha are going to die. I love you Qing Xiao directly. I heard that His Highness is engaged to you. I thought you would not agree. I didn't expect you to accept it. Take care, I heard her voice. I heard that the family who loves you recently is going down the road, so I quickly counterattacked. Yes, the Grand Duke's shop sent a carriage to pick me up today. Oops, you won't come alone. Yeah, it's really pitiful. This is the fact. When you are rich, others will change for you. When you are down, no one can hide from you. But this is also a matter behind the scenes. No one will mention it to the public. After all, they are afraid that they will hide if they get together. But Dahlia is not afraid, because he has the title of hating you on his head. With this, no one will care about anything he does, but the unlucky thing is that he loves you. Now he is so angry that his soul and body are moved. I have experienced this kind of thing when entering him. He pressed his hands tightly, crossed his chest, and gave a light bang. He didn't show his weight before talking to others, but I read the whole article, and was so big that a little Amy also rushed. To let him die in front of me. I really didn't know how to live or die. Flora's voice came from behind. Dahlia didn't care what he said about her love for you, she just ignored him and turned around to leave. But Amisku caught the opportunity, and took advantage of the opportunity to make a joke. Sister Ayabe didn't seem to understand. But what Amy didn't know was that Flora was even more terrifying than Dahlia in front of her. Flora played the role of rapid concentration, and then said with a dead gun that I wanted to come with my sister, but the carriage had an accident on the way. What a pity. The microscopic masses were made to cry when they saw Flora coming in. Chichi's point of view only wants to love you. As long as there are one or two people making love, it will quickly spread to every corner. I also realized how far Flora was, but what just happened to Naiha was seen by others. He had no choice but to leave the scene quickly. Dahlia also shook her head and felt sad for him. Even if she dared to provoke him. How can a pampered young lady like Flory do it better than a full-blooded young lady like Flory? I'm sorry, sister, for inconveniencing you. Her smile is beautiful to her, but very annoying to Dahlia, because the face of Aisian hidden in the shell often comes to mind. Only then did Dahlia remember her purpose of looking for Flor. Where is the person you were chatting with just now? The prisoner Lay tilted his head and clapped his hands and said, oh, he went to the rooftop to get some fresh air. This was a rather unsatisfactory answer. There was John upstairs. What trick did this woman want to play? Daria and Bon turned around and wanted to leave, but suddenly the sleeves were grabbed by a deep and powerful force. Looking back, Florigny Lian Zhengyi was struggling with himself, with an IQ expression, as if he was about to cry. Why did Daria suddenly act like this? Stop and make sure no one is paying attention to you. Then I slapped Flory's hand. I asked you not to slap my clothes outside, but Flory just said in a tone of voice that I was too nervous. It would be better if my sister could be by my side. Seeing Flory's expression, it was clear to Lin Shuyen that if Lin Shuyen used this look to express sympathy, it means he is different. Dahlia didn't want to pay attention to his boring and seductive behavior. She turned around and went to the balcony to squeeze in. Then she made an appointment with Dahlia. Ray caught it this time and Daria shook it sideways. The pushed-away supporter landed next to the pillar, attracting the attention of the surrounding people for a moment. Seeing the look in Flory's eyes, Daria knew that she had re-entered to ask who Wei Shan. It seemed that the person who received the previous task was not only herself, but also Flory. Just as Dahlia walked to the middle of the stairs with her intertwined feet and lips, she was looking at Coach John who was coming down from above. But unexpectedly John passed Dahlia directly, and the competition went towards Frollo who fell deeply. Dahlia couldn't believe what she was seeing. There was not even a room for transformation. John just walked past him with a very indifferent attitude. The exposed attitude made Dahlia's heart drop. Could it be that John also saw Flory like that and sympathized with him? Just as Dahlia went upstairs, she happened to face John Silver, who came down from above. John looked at Daria's behavior towards Fleur just now, and there was a certain tone on his face. Looking back following his incident, I found Fleury, who had not ascended yet, wiping himself to death on the ground. Your Highness, when Fleur was himself, Dariabu looked at John walking by with disbelief. The wind that followed his steps ruffled his hair, and there was no room for explanation. John walked past him with a very cold attitude. As soon as you turn your head, you can see John Ford falling completely down the stairs. Why? Dahlia didn't understand why John wanted to comfort Lucha. Did he forget the 3 conditions he put forward when cooperating? Dahlia, police officer, hurriedly walked over there, hoping that John could give a reasonable explanation. Although Fleur was weak in power, he could still see that he was probably gentle. He noticed that Daria was quickly approaching him, and he took 2 steps back in fear. However, this step back happened to hit something deep. The wine glasses in the tray slid down smoothly, and the flying red wine was scattered with force. The brain briefly thought about a passage, and Dahlia chose the next one. He was not dumbfounded. It was not a reaction to the system. First, it allowed Fleur to play the ball. After all, so many people watched him dirty his Valley jersey. Secondly, I want to take this opportunity to exchange for Li Fu and take away the excited judge in front of me. Just when Dahlia closed her eyes and prepared to welcome the series of red wine, a big hand wrapped around her waist, and she noticed that John Ingxuan's face was green as he was eating. Be careful. John's lowering and the breath he sprayed on his face made Dahlia's face into the conversation. Until the 9 cups fell to the ground and the little Dahlia stepped back to her senses, the Federation withdrew from John's arms. Among them, are you okay? Fleur's voice reminded Daria, who had become the most 2-person world, that there was a green field next to her. Seeing how Fleury didn't know what to do, the pressure was endless. Only it can know the true expression of Ling Shiyan at this moment. The way that the eyes cannot see, taking advantage of his pitiful situation to receive treatment in this world. Makes Dahlia move us. Dahlia didn't hold him back either, and angrily went towards Mr. Fulua Lei, and then used all the strength of the sales manager to hit Fulua Lei's hand. Dahlia herself didn't know why she had to use such force. I just saw Florid holding John's hand and I felt sour. Even that brief contact made me very unhappy. Miss Dahlia suddenly interspersed a deep voice between the two. It was John Dahlia, who blurted out and wanted to ask why he was stopping himself, but he couldn't say anything in front of her cold expression. After John stabilized the floors, he took the lead and left the 5th hall. This time, Dahlia realized how many spectators had gathered around him, so she quietly turned around and hid at 8 o'clock. Silently watching John's backup follow him and leave the 5th hall. Waiting until there was no one in the room, Dahlia turned around and asked about the phone. I remember I said that you can never sympathize with Lene at any time. I don't know if you still remember that Tai Dong, who was directly confirmed by John Bao, did not avoid the wood. The light is actually accessed with a very natural voice. Your sister is currently in a relationship with His Majesty. If you embarrass her under the influence of the Imperial Court, this will undoubtedly affect your child. Not bad, it will also have a bad impact on your plan. These words were what Police Dahlia had to refute. She thought silently. There was indeed a large flow of people near Fleur just now. They all saw Fleur and Shima falling apart on the ground, but they also looked at them differently. They guessed that this prop might also be Dahlia's fault. Seeing that Dahlia calmed down, Yoan held Dahlia in his hands. John comforted him with a gentle voice. I was worried about you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have hugged you just now, right? Dahlia paused for a while with his hand. And his low rain made her feel hot like a lie. Leah's mind cools down, but it was also this flower that reminded Dahlia of the moment she was held in his arms, and she felt warm instantly. He hugged her waist, his strong arms, and his broad chest. She recalled everything that happened in that moment. Jumped up randomly, John stepped forward and said, if you calm down, let's go back. If you don't show up for so long, there will only be more comments about you. Dahlia's eyes can't see a speck of dust on the black swan melted glove. Then he raised his hand pretending not to care. Putting aside his bad mood, John's words make sense if you think about it carefully. To embarrass Fleur in a place like this is bound to spread among the nobles. If it really reaches the ears of the Emperor, it will be troublesome. It seems that we have to do our best to suppress the hatred in our hearts. When they returned to the dance hall, the music playing in the venue had changed. Everyone did not pay attention to the small gap that had just occurred. They had already booked their own bar and were walking around in the Yanghui Hall. Just when Dahlia was thinking about when to go back, she saw Joanna's voice from a distance, provoking the yellow Liana Chun, who wanted to stand on the Felicia ceiling and announce that his face was not very good, and he seemed to be looking for himself. 500. The nature of the matter with Dahlia's shield was just to pull out John when he wanted to let go. Then he nodded and rubbed his feet and said, "Honey, Joanna, it's normal. Let's come over here." Under the escort of John, the two returned to Dang Dang's dance hall. The dispute came and went quickly. The nobles had already made plans for their respective hegemons. They went back and forth at the Yanghui listening conference. And Zhongren didn't pay too much attention to the efforts of the district and the restoration of the law. But when I pressed my eyes hard, I saw the good-looking Qiao in the crowd. His face was not very good. Thinking of the paper that Noir gave to John, Dahlia was a little angry and said to John softly, "Dear Nico, little Anna is coming to us." John immediately understood Dahlia's strength, so he held his hand and restrained Dahlia's waist. He skillfully brought Dahlia to the center of the Hui Hall. "Dear, now is the time to relax." The two of them naturally blended in with the crowd in pairs, with happy smiles on their faces. This is a case of the bridge. Dahlia is standing in the distance without forgetting to describe it. Qiao Anazu was standing blankly on this road. When she saw the sound of two people hugging each other on the opposite side, her face suddenly wrinkled. At the same time, red flowers popped out of her eyes. It was a look full of extremes. Slapply smiled, but she just stared at him and wanted to hit her fiancé. Compared to Flo, dealing with this kind of person is simply the opposite. They practiced their postures with the changing music. This is why Dahlia raised the king's face more carefully. John's face on the opposite side was John's hand on Dahlia's waist, which showed a short-term effect. Dahlia's hand was elegant. The salesman who closed his eyelashes on his shoulder, Dudley tightened his grip on John, and suddenly came up with a word that had no beginning or end. It was an agreement with His Highness for the trip. "I also hope you can think about how hard I can work now." When I heard the joke about John from Daria's field trip class, I had never seen him smile like this. It was like the summer sun had moved. He sometimes showed such a friendly and naughty smile. But it was only familiar. John began to relax and move his feet to the music. Dahlia concentrated on the experience of keeping up with his pace. Learning educational dance was a good choice. The two danced face to face and turned around and returned to each other. Current events would also follow each other every time this time. Daria used John's royal blue eyes as a beacon to maintain her balance. Dahlia suddenly found that John looked more handsome today. His face was so beautiful that people couldn't understand the reason for the lack of understanding in the original work. Unknowingly, John was also staring at Dahlia's eyes, but he held on with a low voice. "Looking at it from such a close distance, your eyes are so beautiful. They are like a sea of silk. So dreamy." Due to the color correction, Daria's lips and mouth could only say some perfunctory words of praise. Daria then realized that she had never looked into Johan's eyes like this before. His eyes have a profound temperament. One look at Wei can make people feel happy. The eyes of the emperor are different in beauty. If the red cat with long ears gives off a burning aura, then the shouting wild cat makes people feel a foggy temperament. Although Dudley suppressed you and made you full of energy and perfunctoriness, John still showed a wonderful expression. Hearing your compliment was really exciting. Then John came to Yang smile and waited. "You are completely different now from when you were a child." I don't understand why John suddenly mentioned things from his childhood. Dahlia doesn't know how to answer because the story is not mentioned in the novel, and the plot has not been memoized from the original owner's mind. Whenever the back part of the mind is mentioned, Dahlia will block the golden cloth. Seeing that Dahlia was a bit stunned, John kindly helped him remember it, but this memory was a bit too big. When Dahlia was a child, she actually disliked John for being ugly. No wonder this time Daria finally understood why John Tang was so resistant when he first approached him to cooperate. It turns out that the original creator, who was a kid, wanted John, a small airport, to provide the foundation. Dahlia is not only embarrassed now, but also confused and doesn't know how to answer. Daria drew herself into the story that John was telling her, and then she just answered with assurance. "I was so naive at the time, and you know that I am notoriously naive." Daria was very satisfied with her answer, but John seemed to be wondering whether this sentence was true or false. Fortunately, this nervousness disappeared in the following conversation. John made a profit with Dahlia. By the way, why not privately say that your homework has improved a lot? He said that you study very seriously. You want to. I knew that he rarely praised people. Thinking of the stern tutor Dahlia, she didn't expect that the man would praise anyone without being a matchmaker. He looked at John's expression suspiciously, but there was no meaning or falseness on the principal's face. Remember, no matter what, this is a compliment to myself. Dahlia nodded and said with amazement, it's thanks to him that I learned the waltz. John's voice suddenly became very low-pitched. Is this how you and Bruce practice distance? Did he also throw your waist like me? Dahlia turned his head differently, and saw the slightly stiff look on his face. His hand on his waist was also exerting force. Written by Darius. I thought about what I said wrong, but didn't feel anything unusual. His long silence made John's face darker and darker. What answer did he want to get from himself? Dahlia swallowed the silent scream and started thinking in confusion. And then tried hard to remember what he was doing. Scene. No, just roughly learned postures. How could he be so old? Really? John slowly relaxed his expression, and somehow still had a satisfied look in his eyes. During the conversation, the fast music changed, and the speed of the dance also slowed down. As soon as the waltz ended, people distanced themselves and dispersed. Dahlia just reluctantly put her fingertips on John's hand, elegantly pushed aside the crowd, and returned to the place where she and Florrie parted ways. Fortunately, Florrie stood there without moving. His profile, trapped in the city, was facing the person who was about to be taken over by his mother. Dahlia's changing tower or floor's fearless fantasy. Hearing the low sound of changing, it raised its head with a searching sound. In the eyes that were searching for locks in the air, one could feel the impatience of perfection and joy. Of course, the moment I spoke to Dahlia, this complexion dissipated like Shuyonghua, the smiling lips were like a mask, and the trembling look was ridiculous. It was a new wine glass from Song and Floret pointed backwards. There was a silver plate on the table of life. As he said, there were 3 high-end wine glasses made of glass. Sister, come and have a drink. In the eyes of others, he is like a sister who takes good care of her sister. Florrie knows this, so she will behave like this when everyone around her pays attention to her. For a guy who feels this more than anyone else, he would never touch that glass of wine. Although John Sheldon by the flag took the cup from Flor, I don't want to watch this hypocritical person put on a show anymore. The broadcaster looked at the crowd. This is when I saw a lost figure running away from the crowd in a distance. Daya, who was watching quietly, felt a little uncomfortable and slapped his hair on the head. That hair was not natural and light, which was a bit annoying. The attitude of anti-officials and supporting Luo Lei is also different from before. Dahlia suddenly realized that the cup just now was made of fine material, but this time it was indeed ignored. He turned his head quickly and saw that John was about to put his lips on his back. John was about to stop. The sober John didn't have time to swallow dew into the costume. No, there is a problem. The cup I just received is made of suction, but this time I received a glass plate. Judging from the history of that whereabouts, there must be something wrong with this wine. After that, I felt Dahlia caught John's sleeve with a cold. How, dear, I suddenly felt like you could just carry it to me and drink it. I don't know how to explain it. Dahlia considered grabbing the cup from him in Sanchuaxin. Not only was he willing to feel it for a while, but Flor was also curious and looked at him with amusement. I took care of it and stared blankly at the wine in the back of the glass. The aroma was no different. I shook it slightly. From the outside, it didn't mean much. In order to verify his conjecture, Dahlia raised his head and put the wine into his mouth. I give full marks to the good guy's wave operation. Ling Linghuai had problems for a long time and still kept it in his mouth without hesitation. Now Dahlia is as good as Shen Nong back then. Shi Shen Chang by Cao Feng Fandalia could feel the strong fragrance of the wine cold in her mouth. And the sweet and sour taste spread to her tongue. After waiting for a while, nothing special happened. Dahlia was still confused. Is it really because I am worrying too much that the point is not disappearing? Seeing that Flor in front of me was also drinking, the doubts in his heart disappeared. But just this time, Dahlia heard the crisp sound of huala huala. She tilted her head and looked at the wine glass in her hand. The prototype of the wine on the surface was like a lake water that was shaken by 10 pieces. After a moment, Dahlia suddenly felt I had a fever after a while of activity, and it seemed that I needed something to use. Daria, How could you have detected a scene from his sudden lowered head and silence? John spoke to him in a low voice. Heroine wanted to answer, but the liquid in his mouth came out at this moment. Right. I remember that my drinking capacity is not that bad. Why didn't I take a small sip and took it off? Heroine was busy using his hands to put 5 beads on his mouth, but when he saw clearly that the thing on his palm was gone and he was dumbfounded. He had indeed taken it off. But it was just a matter of taking it off. He didn't want to make a more ugly appearance on the video. He was so busy that he forced his mouth to open with his hidden hand. Every time he coughed, blood would remain on the tips of his fingers. The white under the beautiful collar is also turned red by blood. When I pressed hard, I felt like my whole body was on fire. The burning sensation caused me to sit on the ground. An indescribable pain wrapped around my entire neck and slowly spread into my belly. The dropped glass was also shattered like marble floor tiles. Hearing the sound, Flory couldn't help, but went to the front court to take a look. His face turned pale when he saw the terrifying screen in front of him. Dahlia relied on the Iron Man to hold herself up. Fortunately, he can be regarded as a middle-aged and elderly man. He is not an ordinary NPC. He will not die for a while. In the crowd of users, Dahlia relied on the required plug-in that came with her, and used her last strength to stand up and point out the direction where the miracle seemed to be disappearing just now. Johnson's eyes widened at his gesture. John quickly understood his body language. The internet war broke out and shouted, "Someone, please close the door for me. The prisoner should still be there and he will listen to you." This is a line that can only appear in mystery novels. Hearing John's angry voice, Dahlia slowly closed her eyes. The burning pain in her mouth was so strong that she didn't even have the strength to look into her eyes. The footsteps and sharp toes of the distraught nobles refused to end. Dahlia's radiance continued for several days, during part of the day and night. After a few more days, she became very sensitive. Dahlia felt that her body was much more relaxed. She slowly opened her eyes. What brought tears to her eyes was a ceiling with a deep green light. After I woke up, I considered whether to get up and call the saint. However, I felt the weight of the sediment as soon as I moved my hands. When he turned his head, he saw the face of the sleeping man leaning on the bed, holding his hands tightly. He was like a withered statue, immersed in the green shadow, and sleeping with his eyes closed. The sweat of the moon forced me to press hard to make a sound, and my dry throat sound was made clear. John's eyelashes fluttered when he heard his voice, and his watery eyes immediately recorded his true appearance. Dahlia finally woke up, and John suddenly started to move. He just grabbed his hand, his eyes were filled with green eyes. Dahlia looked at his worried expression, but couldn't say anything. If I remember correctly, the first time I saw his expression was because the assassin's fellow prisoner was waiting for him. It was only then that Dahlia noticed that her hand was in contact with the one he was losing. She wanted to struggle, but was held tightly, as if she was afraid that she would run away without swearing. John didn't say anything and just put Dudley back on the bed. Great, at least the fever has subsided. John let out a deep breath. It wasn't until he let go that Dahlia became increasingly concerned about the balance. Dahlia had many things to ask. What was the reason for her collapse and who did that? John's expression was the same as Ty's, and then he told Dahlia what happened after he fainted that day. Danding explained calmly and asked Dahlia to raise her brows on the bed and start doing it by herself. Heroine spoke in a heavy tone. I will listen to your opinion on the outcome of the prisoner's treatment. But the most important thing for you now is to rest. After understanding John's voiceover, Dahlia stared at him closely. It seems you already know who the prisoner is. John couldn't reach it, so he could only avoid Dahlia's sight, but his reaction was the best answer. It's so disrespectful. Who can make John dare not speak out? I wanted to ask some more questions, but after thinking about it, I forgot about it. If you don't want to tell others, even if you push me now, you won't give a straightforward answer. At this time, John Scoo remembered something and took it out from the deep fungus. When you were still sleeping, the priest came and asked me to call you this. Children of a strange world, just wait quietly for these 10 days. This sentence echoed to Dahlia again. It seems that the time has come. This is the god. I pressed the button eagerly to know what the Lord of God was, but John quickly opened the door. Eat something before you watch again. I'll give it to you when you're done. Soon you will bring you the hot soup with sugar and sugar. Malai's spine felt warm. Heroine had already picked up the spoon. His determined expression matched his cold eyes. Even the movement of shaking the spoon was very exciting. In fact, Dahlia's usual taste is empty and she can hear a bad sound at any time. But before I could take it and eat it, I felt a little nauseous and couldn't even open my mouth because of the excitement. Daria quickly moved forward, and John noticed his movement. "Take care of it." Hearing John exchange his names again, he glanced sideways. John took a bite of the soup and puffed on it, then drank it in one mouthful. "What's going on? Didn't you try it for me? Why did you start eating it first?" Before asking any more questions, John waved his hand and walked to the front of Leah. "You can eat now. I was taking care of it, but I was afraid of being cold-hearted, so I carefully let go of Wuzuzui's hand. Miraculously, I didn't feel cold-hearted this time. The sweet and refreshing smell of the hot food was my appetite. Under the call of light heat, it took a mouthful, and the hot and delicious soup filled its mouth." Watching Daria finish eating, John said in a low voice. It's not just because he had a hard-on with his head that he would be defensive when seeing food from unknown sources. Thinking of this, John still blamed himself. "I wish I had just drank that glass of wine if I had known." "Then please hold Dahlia's hand and say, 'It's okay. Wu is here.'" "Don't worry." Even though he said that, John's face looked quite gloomy and full of worry. Being held tightly by John, Dahlia felt an unprecedented sense of security. Seeing John's self-reproaching actions, Dahlia was safe and fine. "I won't die so easily before I succeed in revenge. My great plan has just begun. Thank you for this. Worry about me. I haven't experienced such meticulous care for others in a long time." John put his hands down and seemed to have made an important decision, directly from John Qingshao. "From now on, please call me John, Jiuhao. Don't call me again. I don't understand the answer. Why is it actually called? I have to explain it one by one. Sister John knows that the reason for rescuing the school phone is because of the students. So you can just call me by my name from now on. This will make our relationship much closer in the eyes of outsiders. Besides, this will also help your plan." He opened his hair-pressing hand and nodded quickly. John waved his fingers gently, and Cecil spoke after a moment. "During your coma, I thought a lot about you. You are now in the same camp as me. Those who were my enemies now also regard you as my enemies. Because I was concerned that you might be put into unnecessary danger, so I think." Speaking of the key point, John suddenly stopped. "It's hard to control your reading." Dahlia was already very nervous, and she found John staring at her eyes. In the chaos, Dahlia's eyes began to wander, and Lishi was looking for a suitable place to stay. Finally, it stopped on John's nose. Whenever John wanted to say something serious, he would wrinkle his nose and feel cold. After the injection, I suddenly became a little uneasy. I pressed forward to fill my dry lips. "It's okay. If you have anything to say, just say it." After hearing this, John stood up and walked directly to Daria's bedside. He opened his mouth. "I thought about it. I want to officially announce that we are about to get married and engaged. Let's skip it." There was a brief silence. Of course, John's face was calm, as if he was saying something relaxed. Topic: What? What did you say? Daria was at a loss. He was groping for words while trying to force out his words. His heart started to beat stupidly, but he didn't get permission from His Majesty the Emperor. "Your idea is a bit unrealistic. I have a way to make him have to allow it." John recorded a look in his eyes that he had never seen before. He seemed to have no intention of withdrawing his opinion. His expression was very firm. In that decisive atmosphere, Dahlia could not stop him. It's just that his eyes are wide open. In fact, what he hopes most is to get married immediately. When he thinks that this is the situation he got after saving his life twice. He feels very happy, but he also feels that it is ridiculous to settle the issue so quickly. But Dahlia did not show her joy and quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, this is to be said slowly. By the way, how is Flory?" Dahlia is also very curious about Floor's current situation. According to the original description, it was not him but Floor who had an accident at this performance. According to the rhythm of the original work, a very important event for Floor is about to happen that day. Takafushi Nemo suffered great humiliation from her side and later met Yume, who was also participating in the performance. This plot also promoted the relationship between the two of them. But I never thought that I would get into an accident halfway through, which would lead to the story being expanded and changed. To be honest, I don't understand why Dahlia wanted to drink that long glass of wine. If it were me, Florin should drink it first, so that he can reach the normal night temperature in his province as soon as possible. John recalled what happened that day. Florrie was picked up after being frightened. This is when Dahlia suddenly thought of the person she had forgotten and dared to ask quickly. What about Joanna? Where is the wedding notice between him and Abbott? John shook his head with a pale face and took a hot breath, and that matter was also pushed aside. Where is Dahlia? If Joanna and Albert's marriage is postponed, his plans will be greatly affected. Because Joanna and Florrie got closer and closer later, Noel and Florrie's alliance became stronger. But now being postponed is equivalent to breaking a link. I don't know where the future development will go. I can't wait to hit the shield, but I can't wait to hit the shield. I look at the air, and my expression keeps changing. John seemed to feel something strange. He stretched out his face and asked, "Are you okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" Dahlia said she was fine, but his face didn't look good. John didn't quite believe what Dahlia said and shook his head. You don't look that good. It seems you haven't fully recovered yet. I'm sorry that I shouldn't have bothered you for so long. You can rest for a while. I'll go out first. I'm okay now. Dahlia's star is so good for no reason. In order to drag Zheng Chuangchang, he pulled himself into a dirt road all his life, but when it hit the ground, it fell down. Fight hard. As soon as the sword hit Yuan, he stepped forward to hold him up. Jin Huang's heart jumped in pain. You need to rest more now. Don't become a strong person. Lie down obediently and don't move around. Different from the sounds in the atmosphere, he used Dudley to get on the bed with delicate movements, and then began to do it honestly and harshly. You don't know how strong you are now, so you can barely move. Stop being stubborn and lie down quickly. Then he carefully covered his back. What's the story? You've gone too far. Xiozhen's face was on fire and Daria was showing off. She was pretending to be fine. It will take a long time for your business to come. I will tell her about your physical condition then. The gentle yet stern housewife made Dahlia stunned. I tried hard and wanted to say something, but the picture in front of me suddenly became blurry, and I felt that my body was getting weaker and weaker. Is it possible? Isn't it possible that the tonic just now tasted bad? I want to see the Lord. In her sleep, Daria often dreamed of herself passing out after drinking, and those holes kept appearing in front of her. In my dream, I kept thinking about the way Fulua looked at me before I fell into coma. What his eyes revealed was fear. It is the domain courtyard of Yinmo City. After resting for several days, Dahlia's body finally recovered almost. The few people who helped you dress up are the ones who live in a room 1 kilometer away from you. Dahlia wanted to sit in front of a big mirror and look at his face. His pale face suddenly brightened a lot. Although he suffered a little, it was not ugly yet. Today, his face looked particularly white and slender. For this sales look, he turned around. The output is from what we left. Hua Zhongping applied a layer of dye on the lips to add a little more lift. Because the lips were dyed a rose color, they didn't look like patients. After the hostess went out, Dahlia noticed the figure on the table. After confirming that she was alone, Dahlia unlocked the door, put it back on the chair, and opened the door of the balcony. The torn piece of foreign paper contained a shorter and simpler version of the divine realm written on it than imagined. The moon cannot rise before the sun sets. Is the sun and moon made of Nuaheyuahan? I flipped through the pages and didn't see any other words. The entire conversation ended with just one sentence. After taking a deep breath, it seems that I still have to find the sea. Interpreting the Divine Master is also one of the functions of the priest. It's just that we are at John Nan Auda's residence. We need a reason to find a carriage in the housekeeper's world and Chingele. What is the best excuse? He was thinking hard as he walked up the steps. When he went up the steps where Trump often went downstairs, there was a sound of grass in the distance. It was the sound from downstairs. Is it John back? Daria walked towards the stairs with a new lust for sex, but the person who came was not an appointment. When the man heard the deep noise, he turned his head and smiled. Good afternoon, Miss Dahlia. Please give me your advice when we meet next time. Can you talk to me alone? Fake voice and reddish hair, a style that starts to discriminate from the waist and the belt. The blue man is the leader of the Holy Wizards. Dahlia also saw him in front of the palace on the day of the salon. His name is Aaron Serodi. He is the brother of Saint Helen and is as sage as his sister. That man with the big smile. Those green eyes sparkling like emeralds. It's an honor to meet you. Can you give me a moment to talk? The two of them walked to the living room under the guidance of the housekeeper. On the table prepared in advance were 2 fragrant teacups. They were sitting face to face drinking egg-colored black tea. Why did the other person suddenly come to me? What? Dahlia didn't know Aaron's purpose, so she could only ask Jingjing. Aaron's identity is not just as simple as the leader of the regiment. He is also the new head of the Celluo enemy family. He is also the manor of Noel's side. He is the famous person next to the emperor. His status is so high that there are many people following him during the day. Aaron took his share of the teacup very calmly. Whenever he moved his hand, the familiar pattern on the silver seal would flash. They were the 6-sided planet and Hujishing Huaguan, both of whom were knights of the stars of the Grand Temple. The symbol of the group, the hexagonal planet, represents God's benevolence. Huaguan represents the believer's supreme faith. He ties you with a golden thread. Hujishing's Huaguan sheds twinkling lights as he moves. Work hard and take the time to observe Aaron's appearance. Being face to face like this is enough to make people feel nervous. He is indeed an opponent with microdefinition skills. Daria, who couldn't stand the silence, was the first to speak. Are you sent by the priest to find me? Yes, that's right, Aaron Lushu's long-awaited expression. He put down the teacup with a smile, such a cheerful smile and long eyebrows that make people feel very naughty. This is quite similar to his sister Helen. Among the natives, his proportion was only the head of the discrimination group, who protected the sacred temple and the chapel. So Dahlia never thought that she would be faced with a situation like this alone. Dahlia was working hard, and it was also her own ridiculous mood. Aaron answered easily, I'm here to collect the souls. The divine light counts me down. You promised him that you will take revenge on him accordingly after success. Gongping is no stranger to Tsibing. He recalled that when he saw Helen that day, he said that he would talk to him about revenge after even coming down, which is Gongping. I pressed the cup in the direction and asked, now I just need to prepare it for you and then send it to the temple, right? At this time, Aaron shook his head. He also needed the offering specified by the upper corner, designated. This was the first time Dahlia had heard of it. Dahlia had a doubt in her heart. What was that? I had never said anything like that before. Kamawa didn't answer, but put the black tea can in the teacup in one breath, and then put it on the table with all his anger. Her green eyes are as red as flying. Her red and black hair covers her eyes. You only need to answer me one question. What I want to ask is that you were almost killed by a man recently. Is this true? This was an unexpected question. For a moment, Dahlia felt that she was overwhelmed by an inexplicable sense of pressure, and her whole body became cold. Aaron's cold eyes made Jishi and Lingling smile, but his eyes did not look happy at all. Dahlia lowered her voice involuntarily. How did you know? Before she finished speaking, Dahlia suddenly realized something was wrong. Recalling the original content, although she knew Helen was from Noel's faction, he followed the guidance of the goddess, and was forced to accept Noel's conspiracy to poison the throne. But the guy in front of him was different. He really smiled at Nuoa. These siblings should be on opposite sides. Was he really photographed by Helen? Dahlia felt uneasily and began to have doubts in her heart. If he was not sent by Helen, but by Noel, then wouldn't he be using his sister's name to help Noel explore his inner thoughts? At this moment, Aaron asked another question that made Dahlia's heart tremble. Do you know who the murderer is? I'm not sure about this. I don't know where you got the news from. And I haven't heard of anyone going out to investigate this matter. Daliajan probably pretended to answer from the beginning, and used Chibay to demonstrate the corners of his mouth. Dahlia looked for good use and kept changing while brightening Aaron's expression. Aaron's attitude was as if he wanted to pick up the truth between the lies. His green eyes also understood this wonderful atmosphere. I don't know if it would be possible. What tough questions will be asked? But Lun did not ask, but checked the queen who was ready to leave. Every time it twists and rises, it will be reminded of the harsh smashing sound. The electric eye, which looks very heavy, can move the card so freely. Quite strong physical strength. I really don't need to send the Communist Party to the Ninglan Ban hand thief anymore. Yes, no need. Lun didn't say anything to the housekeeper, he just laughed coldly at the door, and just left like that. The look of Mozan's huge emotion made people breathless and hit him. causing Zhong Erjiang's legs to move. Go up and see him off, but Aaron stopped after not taking a few steps. He turned around and asked Leah. By the way, I almost forgot that I wanted to ask you something. Not only did Dahlia sell a lot, she suddenly stopped in the second round and almost hit his back with her nose. Dahlia jumped and looked at him and Aiko with a friendly smile and asked. Tell me, but I can only answer me. No, it's nothing special. I just heard that you met my sister in private. What's the matter with this time? Dahlia nodded belatedly. Yes, I am honored to communicate face to face with the priest. Because the members of the Hand Chapel are a discriminatory group, this may have already reached Aaron's ears, so he didn't plan anything else. Do you really think so? Although I don't know why you met, you must know that meeting a priest in private is obviously still. You may not be able to tell the false memory, but Dahlia is used to the tone of a hostile person, so she can immediately hear the words in Aaron's tone. Aaron Liu has a bad effect. You are willing to break the rules to meet. I think there must be some special reason. I was freed by His Highness Dagong in order to let the divine light make you our engagement ring. What makes me sober is that day, I really met Xingmin with the people who made peace. This is a reliable excuse. Moreover, the engagement and loan is here. This is my travel certificate without the loan. After hearing this, Aaron punched Mai on the head. Apparently he didn't know why Dahlia wanted to find Xingmu. Before Dahlia could breathe a sigh of relief, he raised the corners of his mouth with a smile that was not twisted like before. It was an interesting smile from a bystander, who enjoyed this situation. Well, I guess we will meet soon. I hope you can show your face and have a good chat with me. This sentence means growth. Dahlia tried hard to hide his nervous and gentle mood. This is a kind of silent pressure. Dahlia's wooden bones turned to gold as she watched Aaron walk out of the door at the call of the housekeeper. After a while, the door closed and the footsteps outside the house disappeared. This is when Dahlia's blocked anger suddenly burst out. Because the other person is Kotsura Harem's brother, she was worried that he would also use the divine power to see through her own heart. Fortunately, he did not have the inner strength of Haruna. Nothing happened. Dorian Nan muttered to himself, looking out the window at the sun hanging on the zenith, which was still shining brightly. When can I return to Margaret? There is still one problem that has not been solved, and that is Flo Lay's how long. Is this woman doing something somewhere? Is she ready to hit me on the back of the head? Dahlia took a breath from her intertwined fingertips that were almost rejected. Thinking of this idiot, she couldn't wait to go back and punish him. John came back soon, but he only said that Flory was thinking about him now. But this gave Dahlia a replacement. If this reason didn't work, he wouldn't go either. After all, Yoan was very worried about his body, and he would definitely not let him run around. But there is still good news. John added, I have already asked your majesty while you were sleeping and he agreed that we should get married now. On what terms did you persuade? Dahlia was very curious about what method John used to persuade that stubborn family. John pointed to the illustration in his hand and explained that since I came here, rebellions in the north have become more and more frequent. Many nobles have protested. Although Noel has made countless achievements on the battlefield, he is not mature enough politically. Put down the drawings and invite Han to explore the gas, etc. Due to the shortage of funds in various places, the funds of Shi's regiment cannot be used. I closed my eyes and thought for a while. If the land in the north has not been restored and the funds for the discrimination group are hard to come by, wouldn't it be better for you to return to the north quickly? What does this have to do with our marriage? So I took the opportunity. Let your majesty hurry up and let us get married. If you get the support of your father Wildebo, all these difficulties will be overcome. John was right. The plant that tied the emperor's left and right arms was not just a piece of cake. His family was indeed one of the richest families in the empire. But Dahlia was still pleasantly surprised, thinking that the problem she had been thinking about for so long was solved so easily by John. But reporter John said, I think it's time to tell you who the prisoner is. Hearing this, Dahlia's couplet suddenly turned into dust and she asked very coldly, who is that person? Seeing Dahlia's big reaction, John persuaded me. I want you to calm down first and listen to me. Calm down? How do you want me to calm down? Do you want to listen to the story of the person who wants to kill me? Even John broke out in a cold sweat, and immediately turned around and clapped his hands. The door suddenly opened, and a man walked in normally. Dahlia's feeling of abandonment turned into a lifelong search for breath. What was unexpected was that the prisoner was someone he had never imagined. This was someone who had not been included in the suspect list. This man is none other than Ibu Tepensifa. He is the organizer of Yanghui, and one of John's followers. John clapped his hands and the door opened with a heroic voice. Although I caught the criminal who poisoned me, I didn't expect that the criminal was one of my own. The person who came was none other than the organizer of Yanghui this time, Ibo Tepu Trick. So is this the reason John Bu planned to tell himself? Miss Dahlia, I'm sorry to have come to visit just now. Looking at the man in front of me who is apologizing, Dahlia Zengqiu visited. Is he really a prisoner? John didn't say anything and just nodded. Although Dahlia was very reluctant to believe it, there was no need for John to find someone to scapegoat him. John doesn't know how to do it when he grows up, but Ibu T mentioned it. I think it would be better for him to explain this misunderstanding face to face. Misunderstanding. Dali, who had just reached out to drink tea, suddenly became interested when he heard this sentence. There was actually a misunderstanding, so he took back his hand and stared at Abbott, who was sitting opposite, waiting for his answer. After a moment of silence, Abbott finally spoke. The person who asked people to poison the wine was indeed me, but my target was actually another person. As he said this, Abbott hesitated again, rubbing his hands continuously, and then said it a moment later. But the maid who poisoned me was bribed by someone else, so I changed my target temporarily. After pressing it for a while and listening to his explanation, he asked calmly, so who was the person you originally wanted to kill? Abbott took a deep breath, and then a heavy voice came out. My original target was your face Frome. Dahlia was stunned when she heard Floor's name, but even so she pretended to be serious and asked why you wanted to kill him. Because I think this can help Da Gong Dianxia. This sentence makes people feel puzzling. There is no grudge between John and Flory during the rescue. How can getting rid of Flory help John? Dahlia posted John Yi covering his waist for further explanation. He kept waiting and quietly told the story. This is something I didn't realize the index. It was also my fault that I didn't stop him. In time, Abbott may have felt that John's mention of his apology was like a blue sky criticizing him, and his face instantly turned pale. He quickly interrupted, that's not the case. Miss Daria, it's because I heard that Miss Joanna was going to make a mistake with Floor and His Highness Dagong, but you and His Highness Dagong are already engaged. So I came out here to get rid of Flory. Abbott admired John very much. Now I heard that someone actually wanted to have sex with him and Flory on the premise that he and John were engaged, so he wanted to kill Flory. Dahlia has basically figured out the relationship now, so she asked again, have you found the person who caused the trouble? Albert was so excited that he thought it was Herbert's family. It was just as I had guessed. I remembered Joanna's vicious mouth every year, and when I would like to see myself dancing with John in that intense mask. For Joanna, she believed that she could only get John if Daria disappeared, but Dahlia thought of another question. There were clearly 3 glasses of wine at that time. How could Kiaoan be sure which one he would take? What if by chance Zhu Bai Yuhan gave it to Da? Abbott hasn't investigated this clearly yet, because when he found out about you, he had already committed suicide for his crime. The real culprit is dead and obviously cannot be traced anymore. Because there are a lot of paint knocks, I feel very defensive. Although there is a lot, there is no way to investigate further. At this moment, the man in front of me suddenly banged his head on the table with a loud bang. I'm really sorry, Miss Dahlia. My ruthless behavior almost betrayed you. I'll take over whatever you want to do with me. If I were to name one of Abbott's strengths, it would be that he is such a handsome person. Even if he has a high self-esteem, he will apologize unabashedly in the face of his mistakes. It is because of this that I admire him. Dali Ya did not punish her for this, even though she was in a coma for many days, but after all, this matter promoted her and John's marriage. It can only be said that they are dependent on each other. Dali Ya said personally, you just need to promise not to do it again. Just keep making decisions privately like this. Abbott pursed his lips with a look of disbelief on what was happening to him. From that expression, he could feel the intersection of skill and excitement. Albert was greatly moved by the gentle forgiveness. He did not expect to be forgiven. After all, the title of Dahlia's concubine had already spread throughout the palace. So he was already prepared to accept the severest punishment. According to Dahlia, who is known for his evil deeds, this kind of forgiveness is ridiculous. But what he doesn't know is that Dahlia is actually just trying to win people's hearts. Stop loving Potter and still want to talk. Dahlia doesn't want to make things troublesome. Extremely blind turns his attention to John Temperature. What do you think of my decision on TV? John locked his shoulders and said lightly, I respect your opinion. Then John turned around again, and looked at Ai Buti in front of him nervously and seriously. Although the circumstances this time are very serious, because Miss Daria has a lot of red frames, I will forgive you for this process. But you have to promise not to do the same again. Ebert's humble escape has become a dream. I would like to thank you both for your forgiveness. If you two need me in the future, please feel free to tell me. I will deal with people close to power. This is the answer that Dahlia has been waiting for a long time. Jian Laluo's goal is to reach Dahlia and finally show a 9-bit smile. Time flies. Daria and John's wedding took place as scheduled in 4 days. During these 4 days, Dahlia originally thought that this was quite ample preparation time. However, as the days of dressing up from the door continued after being ordered by the imperial master, Dahlia gradually began to feel exhausted and felt that time was also passing by. It drains away faster. They mixed it with wind and grass and asked to rub the body every day to sell the seeds. It is not true, but also lose the hair to filter the dust. Thanks to this, not only the face, but also the hair began to shine, and only eat certain foods and drinks. But the only thing that remains unchanged is the extra teaching time every day. This also makes it more urgent to prepare the dress and gestures to be worn on the wedding day. Dahlia can only be too busy to open the glue. Miss Dahlia, please pay attention to the voice that sounds bad. Her thoughts were interrupted and Leah suddenly woke up. Bruce cleared his throat and said, Now I want to talk about the last step of your wedding. It is also the most important step, which is that you two kiss each other. Dahlia has not yet realized the seriousness of the problem, and is still silently following the content engraved by the head of the department. But suddenly I was overwhelmed by a huge pressure. Wait, what you said? I want to kiss His Highness and Your Highness. Different from his surprise visit, SISI played with it calmly and repeated the explanation again. What's the problem? Isn't this a bad routine for weddings? I told you that it rained in the palace, where His Majesty the Emperor and the nobles were staying. Just complete the trial research paper. Is there such a discipline? Is there really such a rule? This should be a discipline with a tradition of drinking, right? The unthinking answer left Daria speechless. But thinking back to the first time he saw John, he never asked himself if he really loved his expression. Now Dahlia has no intention of going to class. Her mind is already filled with the rules about picking me up. It seems that this wedding will also be a big problem. Just when Bruce wanted Daria to analyze again, there was a knock on the door. A woman wearing a Chinese calendar greeted everyone with a brisk voice. Busai was blocked by his aura and stepped back repeatedly. This was the first time he saw such a natural and familiar person. Unlike Busai, Dahlia couldn't wait to be happy. Finally, someone came to rescue her. Tewarite excitedly pointed behind him and introduced the visit he had just completed. I will bring it over for you to try. Can you take some of your time? Feng Lei's chest and slender waist fell down. What is its status in the social circle? Special the royal family, a well-known interviewer and social celebrity in the Valite Empire, also recognized its ability and allowed it to make wedding dresses. After receiving permission that was not humiliating, Tewarite couldn't wait to open his pen. Then Zhongdua stepped forward from Fenfenyu to help Dahlia Liang eat. When the dress was thrown out, the first thing that caught the eye was the snow-white and wind-blue dress. This is the recently popular Lion-Eye Quanquan Tewarite, which added a layer of large lace on top, which looks very special, noble and elegant. Only then did Daria realize that under her own appearance in the mirror, there was a dress made of white lace and soft unwrapped chest, with golden roses hanging on the chest. The curves of the smoothly exposed shoulders and folded chest were also very charming. The hem of the dress was also very charming, decorated with pearls and hooting-jie. It sparkles like the Milky Way whenever it floats. Rose-colored lips and crimson face frame are perfect decorations. Dahlia dresses carefully and stands in front of the mirror, constantly looking at her appearance. The cold atmosphere of Dongshuang matches perfectly with the white Lian Ichun. Even the smooth silver hair forms a contrast with the golden embroidery of the dress, making it more eye-catching. The purple copper red also complements the roses standing in the snow. It left a strong impression on people. The colors of Lian Ichun are very coordinated. Just when the two of them had nothing to do, the ice ship knocked on the door. Miss Dahlia, His Highness Dagong wanted to see you. Pressure, pressure, pressure. The mood has been rising, and I am calling the doctor to wait for a while. The happy party of Tehuali district is in front. Pressure. I would be very grateful if His Highness Dagong could take a look. If there is anything that needs to be modified, you can also ask. Tehurit, who didn't hear Dahlia's play, opened the door fiercely. It happened to be a devilishly ambiguous posture, pressing down and facing the man standing at the door. He was as stiff as a stone. John's eyes were wide open. With an inexplicable Shen-King-Fu, he tried to suppress it. His watery eyes swayed rapidly in Huang Huan's blinking eyelids. Yu Han, you're here. Even though he was very busy adjusting his posture, he was still seen looking confused. Not only did he feel shy, Dali, because he was concerned about Dali Yalu's shoulders and chest, John stood up even more. In front of the curtain, I apologize. I didn't know you were changing your clothes. The topic that Dahlia was looking for went into the atmosphere. Fortunately, Walter quickly joined the conversation. Great, His Highness is here too. Please take a look at Miss Dahlia's wife. If you have any objections, if so, please tell me and I can make corrections in time. John looked at Dahlia's huala skirt, hesitated for a moment, then bit his head and said, this is already perfect. It is infinitely accessible, and does not need to be modified. Thank you, Your Highness. After hearing John's praise, Dahlia tried hard to calm down her internal mood. Even he himself didn't realize that his cheeks had turned red without realizing it. Just like this, the whole hall was rosy. At this moment, Tehurit pointed to the empty seat next to Daria and said, can you stand here under the power of great power? Okay, just when John's ridiculous sister Baba. Tehurit naturally pushed to the back and destroyed John. Or you want to see the scene of two people standing together without looking forward to it. As John got closer, Dahlia's breathing suddenly became more rapid and faster. John wasn't much better either. He didn't know if Dahlia had just sprayed perfume, and could smell it as soon as she got closer to him. The fragrance was emitting, and John felt the sweat on his back flowing, and even Dahlia became rosy. This stone Tehurit took out a small jewelry from the bag. He Chanwei Rong Zhiqing's gem, and opened it to reveal the connection between pearls and silver Zhiqing. It may be to echo the Yuli Fuxiang, so it does not appear to be intrusive but stands out. Elegant style. Tehurit said to Lian Yuhan, please ask His Highness Dagong to bring something for Miss Dahlia. Yuan looked at Tehurit with a smile and said late, are you talking about me? Dahlia was also as horrified as Yuan. You can look back at Tehurit. In fact, it's not surprising that the two of them had such a big reaction. In this world, it would be quite shameful for a woman to ask a man to bring her a match in person. Although I knew that Tehurit's attitude was very positive, I didn't expect that he would actually make such a request to John. Dahlia was about to step forward to stop him, but to his surprise, John she moved first and snatched away the necklace from Hezi. The necklace in jewelry Hezi swayed flashingly. It's okay, John. I'll do it myself. Even though Dahlia borrowed her sister's toy tower, John still took Karen and walked around behind him. I don't know if Tehurit already knew that this would happen, and he pushed him out with a red face. The dancer made a thief's mouth. Yuan was determined to be too independent. Dahlia was not transitioning to the president. Instead, she turned around and plucked the white knotted Jing's hair. Now Yuan's eyes were filled with fish, and soon the gloves grazed his neck. Dahlia felt a twinge of pain. The refreshing touch and the cold warmth wrapped around his neck. He couldn't see Yuan's expression, which was hidden by his silver hair. Daria felt a hint of Han's expression, because he was also very curious about his expression now. But John took care of Ya Liangqi's hair after he remembered it. How does it look good? The necklace matches the lace on the chest very well. Seeing this beautiful picture, John Bu consciously stopped and praised him. This also made Tehurit Jianjian, who was hiding in the corner, record a fierce tiny. Then Ti Huate clapped her hands and walked to the two of them and said, please wait a moment, Chenka. There are still some accessories on the carriage that have not been brought over. I will go and get them now. Wait, don't go deep into Daria Marie. My hand wants to grab Tehurit, but it just dances in vain in the air. It's useless to shout. Tehurit and his followers seem to rush into this room. Time flows away in an instant towards the retreat class. Maybe it was the situation of being left alone with John that caught him off guard. The corners of his mouth were slightly pressed, and the heavy aggressiveness was pressed down in the room like a stone. Both of them were secretly disturbing each other, and the hands were strong and strong. She turned on the fan and walked towards the window. Only by keeping distance from him would she feel less rigid. However, John moved closer to him. Dahlia kept salivating and lowered her head to see his penis getting closer and closer. John leaned into Dahlia and waited. Wu said that the necklace is very beautiful and suitable for you. The gentle praise once again made Dahlia's face feel hot and difficult. Demo grooming mood. The headbutt hit lower, and the hair covered the face facing John. Thank you, His Highness Dagong, for saying this. I am deeply relieved, but Yusho didn't give him a chance to look out, and looked at Dahlia's face. Her face was introverted and aggressive, and her eyes were as clear and undulating as the lake. Dahlia almost stopped breathing. It was as deep and crisp as the lake, and at the same time gentle. His eyes stayed on Dahlia's sweet face and then slowly spread the fragrance. Didn't he say, call me fishy? The soft and warm voice makes the heart that is not lost jump again. Every time this time, it will be jumped again. Maybe it will be violent when holding a wedding in the future. Taking care of the rapidly beating heart of an mansion, I pretended to smile. Oh, I forgot about that. At this time, John's preliminaries noticed the mountains of tired guests on the table. Can Wen and others still cope with their homework? There should be a lot of understanding at the wedding. Dahlia's eyes chasing the lip piece recalled Bruce's last step. Daria felt hesitant before asking the question. John must have known about this. He knew it but didn't ask me how I felt. Isn't that what he cared about? How did he manage to be so calm? Your face gets hot when you think about trying to develop Vandalia, but Dahlia couldn't help the curiosity in her heart. She coughed quietly and cleared her throat and said, John, I have a question to ask. Dahlia International asked about tattoo extensions. John had a different look on his face and asked, is there any problem with the wedding you mentioned? He fell silent and noticed that Dahlia's cheeks were slowly turning red. Only then did he realize that it was past his mind. The movement of John's lips and the movement of his gloves was just one thing. Ah, John's clear voice gave him a chill in his new suburb. He didn't expect that he could answer so calmly. Da Li, he quickly shook his head from side to side and asked, why are you so calm? You are going to pick me up with a woman you don't love. This action is not like his usual. It feels a bit careless and even a bit clumsy. John quietly moved his head closer and asked, is this just a sacred agreement? Don't think about it so complicated. Daria was blushing at John's attitude towards leading people. This contrast made him feel that John was more like an adult than he was like a child. Don't talk about Jin Wen. It's very difficult for Dahlia, who came to this world without even having a boyfriend. If it's just a formality, it's okay to say it. But it's different when it's physical. If Jin Wen is involved, the other party will clearly feel it. Until I made a decision that I couldn't live with. John's casual attitude even made people think that he was quite skilled in tattooing. Daria curled her iron lips neatly and turned around. You said it too lightly. This is my tattoo. John Jiang put his hand on Dahlia's street and asked Dahlia, are you nervous? He smiled like a red child. Dahlia's reaction was different from the rumors. Unexpectedly. It was always rumored that Watana was as arrogant as a soldier. Dahlia also has such a cute side. John is still talking, brother, it's my first time too, so you don't have to worry. John's answer is Dahlia's amount is too much. Is it your first time too? His eyes are shining like purple water and gold, and he looks directly at the man in front of him. The experience shakes the night. Purple is like a glass of rich wine. Of course, do you think I'm the kind of rich person? I only care about discrimination groups in the north, let alone women. We don't even have a compromise service there. As he spoke, John swelled his hands as elegantly as he wanted to. The clear blue eyes swayed coolly in the black hair. The corners of the mouth raised and she asked him softly, why don't we practice these for a while? Dahlia couldn't help but grab his hand. And was suddenly taken by John. That passionate gaze attracted you, and you could even feel John's breath. Are you sure? John could answer seriously. Dahlia fell into a huge confusion. And retreated hesitantly. She wanted to distance herself, but John strode forward. He put his big hands on Dahlia's waist and brought the distance closer. At this time, Dahlia felt her mouth dry and her mouth was drooling. John's low voice made him feel uneasy. He looked into my eyes like this. John first proposed the method. Dahlia raised her head with her hands and feet, and his heart burned slightly. John puts his fingers on Dahlia's lips. I will press your lips gently with my fingers. You try to steady him. When you test it, I will take it away. Then his palm gently assists Dahlia. The soft skin on YA's cheek made John's heart flutter. The movement was small, but he moved his hand without any emotion, and gently pressed his fingers on the woman's lower lip. John was also very nervous. At the moment when Dahlia's coin was performing, he slowly lowered his head. Dahlia closed her mouth nervously. Their noses were cold and they quietly leaned together. Dahlia hesitated for a moment and wanted to open her eyes. When you open your eyes now, you can probably see his musical face. Dahlia is very curious about what kind of expression John will have at this moment. What kind of mentality will he use to coordinate this exercise? John didn't close his eyes while he was thinking hard, he was just looking carefully at Dahlia's face. It really looks like a familiar person, but he can feel a slight pulse outside the lips of the well wall. If he goes up to the well, what cute behavior will Dudley do? This thought aroused his curiosity. The curiosity to know everything. John put down his fingers little by little. A breath spread between their lips, leaving only a little space. An inexplicable interest attracted John's heart. The two of them held their breath and slowly opened their eyes. Launch. Just when their lips were about to touch, the door suddenly opened. Heroine, who barged in without even a chip, made a loud noise. Sorry, there were too many things on the carriage and it took a while. At the same time, Darjean's wet Dudley pressed down on John's chest, which he pushed away first. John didn't have time to feel the pain in his chest and stepped back again and again. An awkward atmosphere filled the neutral room. Heroine's eyes flashed, taking turns to illuminate the two strategic people. Leah turned around and used the mountain fire in her hand to make Lala's face. John innocently looked out the window and heard the sound of dry shells. At this time, the two birds outside the window flew away. Thinking of being almost discovered, her heart almost jumped out of her chest. Aunt Deli took the opportunity to walk over, grabbed him, and walked out, trying to stop him from saying anything shocking. As time flies, the dark night sky swallows up the narrow moon. The moon shines vaguely through the clouds. The deserted night wind quietly obeys the wishes of the house. In the center of the dark garden, the woman who has been fleeing is sold at a high speed. Open pace, Floret bit his lips and walked down the court. Grandma clearly agreed to meet here, so why haven't you come yet? The dark night sky swallows up the beautiful house. The moon shines vaguely under the cover of clouds. The cold night wind quietly floats around the house. In the middle of that dark garden, a woman with a long-distance runner was selling cloth at a very fast speed. Floor's steamboat stopped weakly against the wall. We agreed to meet here, but why didn't we meet anyone? Floor's mouthful of mouthworms are constantly holding onto the wall. I hesitated for a while before I saw Slaney's carriage in the distance. It was the carriage sent by Joanna. When I think of Kiawan, I know that I will know the energy of Yiluale that day, and I am so angry that I can't stand it. Unexpectedly, he was treated as a piece of cake by this rebuke. Floor's double flash said that this step was very close. Help him to give him face, but he added 3 times more poison to the wine. I didn't expect that this bitch actually wanted to get rid of me as well. Entering the carriage with the doctor's hospital staff, little Anna's trajectory has already reached 1,200. But Flory pretended not to know and got into the car, but it was indeed not Joan who was waiting for him. Married son instead of her maid, face-to-face maid took off the long escape, like Flor, also because of the average appearance of women with medium-colored hair. Chen Mopian, he said, Miss Flory, my lady sweated over the failure of the plan. She lowered her head deeply, but this was not enough to alleviate Flor's anger. In his heart, Flor was a little bit behind Joanna's organization. He was almost reinstated because of her bullshit plan. If it weren't for the power of the Wilder Gambling Bureau, he might have been responsible for all the sins. How dare he decide to do so? Flor changed his posture, and bit his nails with a confused look on his face. Anyway, there was only him and she Enu in the carriage, so there was no need to act soft and cooperative. The daughter-in-law disapproved of it and put on eyeshadow. She was really an illegitimate daughter with such rude behavior, but his movements were caught in Flor's eyes. Although it is difficult to see him clearly due to his poor strength and body shape, he can tell a big change from the subtle atmosphere and the other part is gaze. What's that look in your eyes? Faced with the sharp question, the queen immediately raised her head, but it was too late and her expression was ridiculous. After a burst of harsh words, the queen's head turned a large distance to the left. Is it because the eldest daughter's face is getting red due to her absence from work? He can't believe the fact that he was beaten. The girl who blinked slowly heard Florie's mocking voice in her ears. Why, are you wondering how I know what you are thinking? Shoo shoo, even a maid dares to show such an expression to me. I think you are impatient with life. In the mansion, he was constantly compared with Daria. He was imprisoned and subjected to all kinds of discrimination. His strong sense of inferiority made him reveal his true nature. Then Florelaine said in a flirtatious tone, "Go back and sway your young lady and ask her to make a new plan quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for reporting this matter to my sister." It was you who asked with a red face. You are crazy. If this is your way out, you can't run away. Hearing this, Florie laughed in a low voice. It's really ridiculous. My sister and I have no grudges online. Besides, even if someone believes me, I just say it's because you want to write about it. Do you think you have a chance of winning? It was a girl who wanted to make a final conquest, but Florie's words directly cut off her way out. Florie Shao said clearly, and I will see His Majesty soon. So you'd better be polite to me, otherwise don't blame me for turning your back on him. People. After saying this, Florie walked towards the carriage rationally and confidently. Things in life and calling his name several times have never turned back. I jogged all the way back to the mansion, floating on the left side of the mansion with Lei Qingqing's hands and feet, and then walked towards Dahlia's room. Dahlia's room was dimly lit. Floret stopped for a moment, touched the locked door, and cut off his head slightly. The Queen of Earth and Heaven, if she is punished, she will leave here because of her marriage. Ever since she lost her life and opened her eyes again, this woman has been manipulating her behind her back all the time, as if she doesn't want to give herself any chance of being loved. Is it a missile, or even a man, who evades himself and thinks he is rich? Flor secretly demonstrated a smile in the dark. Kixiu Dahlia disappeared quickly. The only problem now is that His Majesty still has no interest in him. It seems that he has to create opportunities by himself. Only by ending with His Majesty and getting her favor as soon as possible can the couple win. Take everything Dahlia has to offer. As for why Fulua Lei was so confident, it was because he received a secret letter before Fulua Lei returned to Fulua Lei, and what happened before Bu Ju Qian. That was before Dahlia was almost poisoned. Occasionally, a letter appeared on the table. I don't know who left it, why, and when. But what was written above made him realize that the author of the letter knew that he was not from this world and had told himself the truth about this world. Florie fell into the city's private sector by force. Although the internal content is not allowed, he is reincarnated in other people's bodies in a strange world. Since he knows that I do not belong to this world, there should still be a certain degree of credibility. The most important thing is that the man accepted in the letter that he is the master of this world. Flor's furious invitation finger hated his body's current situation. Compared with his previous life, there was nothing better except for a beautiful face. But if it was true as his wife said, then everything about Dahlia would be nothing to him. Within reach, strengthen yourself the next day and prepare to go home. At the end of the day, Mingyu wanted to say goodbye to her family. In fact, she wanted to perform a security check at home. After all, Fulua Lei is not a fuel-efficient lamp. What will happen if it fails? Looking at John's worried eyes, Dahlia pushed his hand and said, "No matter how far I go, I will be back before early morning. Don't worry. It's not that far anyway. It will only take half a day." The mayor in the house, Lahihi, was busy looking at the two of them. Dahlia smiled and tidied her loose hair skillfully. His smile was as fresh as the summer sunshine and as cold as ice. Such a smile on his face. Rare indeed. John stared at his smile intently. He should have stayed on the bullet door cabinet and watched his leaving figure. At this moment, Yushong felt a little different in his heart. It was obviously just a relationship in July, but from that day when they almost used practice as an excuse to be quiet, the subtle feeling of excitement has always won between the two. Because she had been dressed lightly since early in the morning, Dahlia's eyelids were filled with tears. She tilted her head and started to squirt some water. While they were intoxicated with sleep, the carriage suddenly stopped collectively. The deputy opened the car door. Miss, that. The deputy looked as nervous as him, his soul hiding. He was dissatisfied that Ju Wen's hand was injured and was covered in cold sweat. What happened? Faced with Dahlia Shili's question, the belly of the car relaxed its heavy mouth. Miss, His Majesty wants to see you. Dahlia was waiting for him with the same vigilance as Yang Shi. Dahlia exhaled slowly. Her eyes were alert and her brows were raised. Why was he here? They were getting married soon, but Dahlia was worried about leaving Fleur alone in Margaret's nice house. She was getting up early in the morning to go home. But she was not concerned about him, but was afraid that he would get his waist straightened alone. Come out. After all, he has never been a fuel-efficient lamp in his past life. But on the way back, the carriage was suddenly stopped. What happened? Faced with Dahlia's overwhelming question, he said in a calm voice, Miss, Your Majesty wants to see you. After hitting Shenking Huang, I suddenly felt plum peach. Why is he here? Dahlia carefully got off the carriage. Shintu rose slightly from the fluttering Liani group. When he raised his head, he was met by knights standing in front of him. Two long and graceful knights stood in a row and looked at him. There is a red dragon pattern on the grey badge exposed on the badge of the discriminatory group. Obviously, they all have a history of belonging to the weak. Dahlia adjusted her posture and faced them with a vigilant expression. The threat from the men, who were willing to seduce them, was too great. She waited silently for Chankahong, and a long shadow appeared. Behind them. Dahlia's gaze, it's just their red bodies. A man's voice actually appeared in the middle of the split. It's been a long time since I saw Miss Dahlia. Noelle smiled and waved to herself. Maybe he came out to break her. There was a long gun hanging behind her. The place where the weak are raised for hunting competitions is nearby, but this does not mean that the Emperor often visits here. What happened today is very likely to be influenced by others. But Dahlia has a vague feeling that Norsov has been squatting here for a long time. I tried my best to keep my face and stared solemnly at the gun, then went to Ichinomir. Nuoer was indeed uncharacteristically interrupting him with nothing. I don't have to do it. When Dahlia paused, having nothing to say, he casually walked into the forest without saying anything. Instead of Zua, Tuanwei tried to follow her by her side. Although his attitude was positive, he didn't seem to give himself the right to choose. If he turned around now that he had nothing to do, he didn't know what kind of harm he would get. If he had known it, he would have stayed in the mansion. Dahlia greatly regretted her decision and regarded it as a disloyalty. He held Li Fu tightly and followed the Emperor. The path is long and extended. It is a very difficult journey for Dahlia, who has just defeated the poison. Even though the honey data covered the sunlight bomb, Dahlia still let the big man take care of him. He stubbornly used the purple cloth to roughly wipe away the sweat flowing down his chin with his hand. Dahlia didn't want to write in front of him that fragility must be broken. There is a slight pain in the lips. Every time I go out, a white table appears. How can anyone in this deserted wilderness find it objectionable to drink tea here? It was obviously prepared by Nuoer in advance. It seems that Nuoer came here well prepared today. Let's do it over here. Lua walked to the table and did the night's investigation. Dahlia briefly stared at the table with suspicious eyes. There were black tea and teacups neatly placed on the table. She thought she might not be able to leave for a while. Ninka stopped at the chair opposite and said, Don't stand up. Let's do it. I have no other intention. I just want to help you relieve your nervousness about the wedding. And I also want to talk to you alone. How are you preparing for your wedding? Sample. Dahlia looked at him and felt anxious in her heart. Although she was dissatisfied with many things, there was nothing she could do about it. Dahlia raised her lips and smiled. Then sat down opposite him, looking at the dark black tea. Dahlia's mouth was filled with bitterness. Not long ago, she was almost killed by the poison in the camp materials. He should know that he was poisoned. Is this an attempt to spy on us? He tried hard to hide his trembling hands under the table and stretch out his breath. After exhaling slowly, Mike Hui, who was extremely smelly, returned to normal speed. And then gently rubbed the handle of the teacup. He took Leah and wrote about the fragrance of the tea, and then received it lightly. Lao Ning was concerned that the work was going well, and I am also looking forward to tomorrow's wedding. In order not to be seen by Noel, Dahlia quickly took a sip of tea after speaking. Fortunately, the black tea tasted good. He held the product hidden under the table and barely defeated it. watching him drink the black tea. Noel raised her lips and smiled. How does this tea taste? After putting down the teacup, a gentle smile emerged from the corner of my mouth. It was great. It was indeed the macro tea enjoyed by His Majesty the Emperor. Noel's Q&A at this time. I heard that you were seriously ill recently. Are you feeling better now? Noel's question suddenly appeared in Dahlia's ears. He quickly came back to his senses and thought about the answer. Yes, I have almost recovered. Don't worry about me anymore. He took off his lower ear and looked at Dahlia Zusi with eyes that seemed confused. He would blush whenever he saw me in the past. Why do he keep having such a sad face today? Notice Nguyen's gaze. Daria is also worthy of not avoiding his events several times. He knows very well that if he loses in fighting spirit, he will lose the whole game. Mao's mind flashed back to the rumors he had heard from Shusho. Rumor has it that Daria has always remembered the position of this queen. There was also Wilderbo, who tried his best to think of ways to stand with him. Wilderbo decided that the purpose of doing this was to advance Sima's newbie. He tried every means to push Dali to his side. However, maybe he wants to see his daughter hide away from his throne. It is for this reason that Noel has been indifferent to Dahlia's sex. But when Dahlia suddenly distanced herself from herself and announced that she was going to marry John, her position was always slippery. Even just seeing Daria and John walking together makes me feel like a man is crawling all over me. Does he really love John? It is this kind of thing that always makes Nguyen want her to death. Now I want to know what thoughts are hidden in the mind of the cold woman opposite. Noel suddenly smiled and showed an extremely healthy look. The news of your flattering eyes has already reached my ears, but now you are too gambling and it has turned 180 degrees. So I am looking for you alone today, because I really want to know you. What else is there about Han? That man's eyes seem to be able to penetrate lies. Dahlia's beautiful face with the sound of movement, trying not to show surprise. Dahlia took a breath and said, didn't you understand this problem? Dahlia really wanted to laugh. Is this the purpose of why he came to see her today? Sure enough. He will always tremble if he doesn't get it. With a fresh smile and a gentle smile, Emperor Daria walked up to Noel and gave him a deep blow. Then he turned around and said, I'm ready to leave like a fire figure. I hope you can tolerate my roughness. Noel looked at the departing figure in front of him expressionlessly, with a trace of identity flashing in his eyes. Dahlia's arm, which was half turned around, was suddenly grabbed by a huge force. Daria took a breath of cigarette, and Noel angrily asked, where do you want to escape to? Noel's lightning class grabbed his wrist and pushed him to the tree. Daria was suppressed by a strong force and his brows were in pain. The ground twisted, but Noel showed no intention of relaxing. He leaned against the tree, gritted his teeth and looked at the weak man, but just grabbed his chin roughly and said, woman, you successfully caught my attention. Noel grabbed Daria's hand harder. He was so attached to me before, but now he wants to marry another man. He is still the same man as Query. Are you so weak? At this moment, Daria could even see the red hair moving in Noel's eyes. Dahlia swallowed the saliva that she drank. Ruo's last words touched Dahlia's pride. The mocking expression on his lips suddenly made Noel's face harden. It's just your personal opinion. Dahlia raised her head high and looked at Noel's bright red eyes. Since he had reached this point, he naturally had to harden a little. Norden looked into Dahlia's eyes and asked the guide why you suddenly changed your mind. Do you have feelings for me in your heart, right? Do you want to tell me that everything before was an illusion created by you? Dahlia didn't understand why he could be so domineering about Ryoko. It was obvious that he was neglecting her, and she just started to get entangled with him in his courtyard. When Daria was thinking about what to say, the only pattern came into his sight, the hexagonal star of Nuo's Yangtze River classmate, and Hu Jixing's flower-shaped earth. This is Dahlia's thought of a way to offend Noel for a quarter while alleviating suspicion. The reason why I did this is because I received a message from the God of God. If I fall in love with you, my heart will not be guaranteed. I am not great enough to do it for love. Life first. Although this is a plot that is not in the original work, the reason why Dahlia dared to make a fuss about Tokyo is because Helen and his songs are not compatible. So even if Noel really asked Aaron to go to Xingnu to confirm the Godmaster, it would be too much since he has already after changing the plot. I am willing to do 1 step, and 2 steps to cultivate. So I can follow this path to the end. The most difficult thing to distinguish between a dispute and a godlord would make even the emperor think twice. I didn't expect this. After a while, Nolting let go of Dahlia's hand. The one who gives the greatest legitimacy to Noel's throne is the divine prison. Therefore, he must not violate the guidance of the goddess. Disobeying the goddess is tantamount to denying his fundamental right to evade the royal family. Lei's assistant Wan's nest disappeared. Dahlia's shoulders rested on her white skin, leaving red handiwork. I still have some things to prepare. If your majesty has nothing to do, I'll be here first. Ningo turned around and said with a smile, okay, let's go. Then we'll see you tomorrow. Looking at Dahlia's back, Noel still had doubts in his heart. If you press me, you will die. Is there really such a divine prison? But the nervous people are not only Nuwa, but also Dahlia. Now he also feels unprecedented pressure. There are more than one enemy around him, and Lianghe, who has been relaxing during this period, is also worried about his self-blame. Come on, I'm still blind. He only thought about taking revenge on Floor, but forgot about the trouble of Noel. Dalian made up his mind to end this unspoken battle as soon as possible after the wedding. If it drags on, it will be detrimental to himself. Aaron looked at the direction where Daria disappeared, and Noel shouted to Hongzhong. As soon as he exchanged calls, a man wearing fake clothes walked out of the trading room. He had been hiding all the movements. Nuo pointed in the direction of Dahlia Li and asked, "Can you find out from Saint Cloud? Is it the content of God Lord?" Wei Lun thought about it for a while, but soon shook his head heartily. Although he wanted to help, he still said regretfully, "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. You also know that my relationship with Hai Lun is not good. He won't tell you. You two brothers and sisters are really getting along. Noel Chinking has developed smoothly in his life. Yu Yue, who is talking to Dahlia, is still clearing his mind." Noel finally couldn't hold back his curiosity, and gave an order to arrange for people to continue to suppress me. "I want to know the purpose of this woman." Wei Lun couldn't help but snicker. "Your Majesty, you are finally sexually attracted to him." But Knowles emphasized that he didn't mean anything in particular, and always kept smiling. A smile appeared in the corners of his bent eyes, matching his handsome face. He showed a cruel application. "Of course, this woman is very interesting. I feel that she will become more and more interesting in the future."